that we're live. All right. Hopefully, we've sorted out these technical difficulties. Let's just make sure. Okay, we are live on YouTube. Rock and roll. And let's take a look. Yes, I know. And we are live on Rumble. Okay, great. Excellent. Hopefully, you guys can test the streams to make sure we're coming through clear. Hello, everyone. Sorry for the delay here. This is a very exciting time. My name is Travis Pangburn. I am CEO of Pangburn, and we are so excited to be streaming on Rumble now, creating original content. And hello to everyone on YouTube as well. So the Pangburn Rumble invasion has officially begun. For those of you who are new, welcome to the Pangburn universe. What is the Pangburn universe? It is a universal attempt to engage in, produce, and promote good faith, helpful conversations. If we are not having good conversations, how the hell do we know what's good? Good faith and helpfulness are the physics of this universe. Good faith in this context means a sincere and honest intention of having a good conversation. Conversation meaning a communication between two or more people in which ideas are exchanged. And helpfulness. Helpfulness in this context means making it easier for your conversation partners to bear fruit from your interactions. These are the foundational ideas that ground the Pangburn universe dialectic. I have worked with some of the world's greatest minds in philosophy, science, politics, and art. Jordan Peterson, Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, Brian Greene, Michio Kaku, Lawrence Krauss, Steven Pinker, and many more. We will be bringing guests like this to our programs here on Rumble. So get excited for that. You can find the growing library of my work at youtube.com/Pangburn, and now here in the video section of our new Rumble channel. YouTube demonetized Pangburn back in 2020 during the pandemic for what myself, my lawyer, and others later determined to be for no good reason. We had to fight YouTube for 18 months to get the channel remonetized. And when we were finally successful, no answer was given as to why this happened. I ate a lot of instant noodles during those dark days. Rumble's policies around censorship give me a sense of ease that I currently don't have with YouTube. Despite these struggles, our YouTube presence is now growing faster than ever with the help of our sub-channels that feature the Pangburn broadcasters and producers that you will all get to know. We recently produced 500 episodes for the Call-In app by David Sachs that featured some of the best-selling authors in the intellectual sphere today and allowed us to play a key role in developing that software. You will all hear more about that very soon. Here's what our schedule will look like on Rumble. Monday, The War of Ideas with John Parker. Tuesday, Dissent with Don Prager. Wednesday, The Female Supremacist with Masha Anderson. Thursday, Philosophy Shock with Tart Vader. Saturday, Torture Time with Thomas Panter. And Fridays, we will all come together for the Pangburn Royal Rumble. Every show starts at 5 p.m. Pacific time. These 5 people have proven themselves to be world-class interlocutors, and I adore them personally. My ultimate goal in this Pangburn endeavor is that your well-being is increased by engaging, listening, and immersing yourself in the richness of the Pangburn community. Now, without further delay, it is time for me to pass it over to the host of the Pangburn Royal Rumble, Don Prager.
We need to be able to have conversations without.
Hello everyone. I am Don Prager, as Travis just introduced me. And all of this great work that you guys seeing, the production quality, that's all possible due to Travis. And I just want to send a thanks from him to begin with for all of this. But the main show here is us. It's me and the rest of my friends that you will come to meet soon. And maybe the cat will jump in the scene or whatever it might be, because this is just us. This is us hanging out, talking about topics, and trying to get you involved as well. This is what this show is about. It's about good conversations. And there is the cat I was telling you about. Not today, cat kitty. Another time. I'm, of course, myself, I talk about philosophy. I talk about politics. I talk about psychology. These are things that I've studied in university. These are things that are dear to my heart. I feel a bit of a stranger coming to Rumble, actually, because I usually get called a leftist and a Democrat and a socialist and all the other things that come along with those statements, but I'm here to actually defend them in a conversation where I don't try to dismiss you, but actually take you through how I think about the issues and why I think they're so important. Before further, I mean, just the next thing I want to take is to bring you guys the next person who's going to talk, which is John. John, take it away. We'll get your intro and you'll come in.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is John Parker. I am of a different persuasion than Don. I've been involved with Pangburn for, I think it's like 4 years now. I'm very excited to be a part of these conversations. This is kind of what I live and breathe. What I studied in university, along with politics and philosophy, is also rhetoric. So I really do enjoy having the chance to do a little bit of verbal sparring. And I think it's going to be a good time. I think it's going to be, we'll shake up Rumble a little bit. And hopefully everybody will be able to enjoy themselves and maybe learn something, or at the very least see things from a bit of a different perspective. That's the mission that I have here. It's the same mission that I have on my show, which is the War of Ideas. And that's we're looking forward to continuing that mission. So cheers. I think it's time for the next person.
You stupid cat. Okay. Anyhow, but yeah, this is John, and this is kind of going to be the layout. But no, let's move on to the next person, and this is going to be Tart.
Hey there, guys. I am Tart. I go by Tart Vader, Tartarus. There's a few other monikers I work under. My main interests are in philosophy, politics. I am left-leaning, so I'm a little bit of a fish out of water myself, alongside Don on the Rumble platform. But I'm excited to be here, anyways. My goal, my mission, and what I really want to do with my channel is take high-level philosophy and make it relatable, conversational, and bring those tools down to help sort of bridge the gap between the dialectics. I think that as far as I can tell, on both ends, there's this needless inability to converse on big topics, on big issues, and I hope that philosophy can provide a key that will help unlock that sort of safe that we have, where we have it all locked away. So that's my sort of goal and my mission.
Sorry, John. Tart is my favorite. But we're not complete without, of course. What? Go ahead.
I will say I am the black sheep of this group, but I think Rumble might.
See, I think you just think that about yourself. I don't actually think you're the black sheep.
Okay,
I really don't.
That's okay. Rumble will like me the best. So you know.
Oh,
it's a fair point.
It is a fair point. Well, without further ado, we have to bring our other friend, my dear friend, one of my favorite people, actually, Thomas himself.
This is Thomas Pander. Well, I'm interested in pretty much everything Don Don is: philosophy, psychology. I have a computer science degree, so I'm very interested in computer science. Um, very interested in physics, and I've had a lot of guests on my show that are physicists, had a lot of guests that are cognitive psychologists. We'll be doing a lot of guests in the future that are along the same lines. Um, my show is called Torture Time because we like to get into the academic rigor of the studies that we're going for, and we'll get into that more later about what it is. But yeah, I'm here to have the good dialectic. I'm here to make friends. I'm here to learn. I'm here to teach what I can and what I've learned, and I just love this place. These are all my favorite people, so hopefully everybody gets to know us better. That's it.
I think we can see that there's something lacking in this entire group right now. Our next person, who I don't want to tell you who it is, you might have seen it from the intro, will probably just call us a sausage fest and whip us into line. So without further ado, here is Masha.
Oh, should I start over? All right. I'll just reintroduce myself. Hello, friends and Americans. I'm Masha Henderson, also known as Yaga's daughter on the socials. I'm your female supremacist, muscle matriarch, elitist Balkan antagonist, because we all need a proper nemesis if we're going to grow. So sharpen your blades, little ones. Let's eviscerate some bad ideas and hunt down demagoguery wherever we find it. I'm here to explore female strength, beauty, self development, and expression. Women are the superior sex, and we need to begin acting that way. I don't care to tell men what to do, but sometimes, out of the goodness of my heart, I'll let you know where you're going wrong. That's all from me for now.
So this is our lineup, guys. This is how it's gonna be. So now we can relax after the days of trying to work this out. We don't need to transition just into my face. That's good. This works perfectly. So, what's our first impressions? What do you guys think? Do we like it? Do we hate it?
I hope everyone hates me. I hope I'm triggering
No,
everybody.
Masha, you're my favorite. Let's
Aw.
okay.
Just because I flirt with you outrageously, just to make you uncomfortable. Is that why?
It helps.
Yeah. One of the best dynamics here is just making John feel uncomfortable. So
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's my
Let's
favorite.
get into that dynamic. That's the best dynamic.
Look at those cheekbones, though. Doesn't
Very sweet. Very sweet.
beautiful.
Yeah.
So
Cut glass with that.
our main topic for tonight is actually going to be Rumble itself, and we're going to talk about just Rumble and like what it means, what it is, the impact it's had, what we think about the platform since we're on here, and how we even got here and our experience with Colin. But before that, we're going to have John bring the first topic up, which is from his show, The War of Ideas.
Yes. Yes. So I run a show every Monday. Most of the time, it's me talking to a very interesting guest. Occasionally, it's just me talking to you guys. But this Monday, we had on Robert Breedlove, who is a self-proclaimed freedom maximalist. It's a pretty unique moniker. From what I was able to gather in our conversation, he's essentially a libertarian bordering on the line of anarcho-capitalism. Now, in my younger, more, let's say, less mature days, I was also heavily sympathetic to the libertarian cause. I am not anymore, for I have grown up. However, this guy is much older than me, and he also knows a decent amount more about what he's talking about than I did back in the day. So I had a great conversation with him. He talked about freedom maximalization. Maximalization. It's a word now. And he talked about Bitcoin because he's also a Bitcoin philosopher, another title that I've never heard before. And his arguments were as follows. He argued that the Bitcoin is superior to any monetary system ever devised in every way. He said that it's because it's recognizable, because it's unique code. It is infinitely divisible. It is infinitely portable. It is very durable because you'd have to take out all the electronics on the planet and the entire internet. And That was why he thought Bitcoin was such a good idea and is the future. He is also very much against the use of force by the states. He does not believe in violence-based taxation. He seems to be something like a pretty social contract purist, meaning that he doesn't really believe in the idea of an implied social contract. For those of you who are not familiar, the social contract is the idea of this unwritten agreement you have with the government or with the state that allows them to take your stuff and have a monopoly on violence over you, and you give up your rights to them because they protect you. Now, nobody actually ever signs those freedoms away on a dotted line. The idea of the social contract is that it's implied. This is the idea of many social contract theorists. Mr. Robert Breedlove does not buy this. He wants people to voluntarily accept their government. He wants them to have an opt-out option. One of the big things he didn't like was the fact that there's such a thing as an exit tax. If you want to leave a country and cut off your country's power over you, there's a tax to even leave. And that was something that he had a big problem with. So I talked to him a lot. I asked him all the questions that I had, but I'm probably more sympathetic to him than any of you are. So I am very curious what you guys think about this idea of freedom maximalization. He kind of envisioned a world that's essentially run on Bitcoin because it's the best currency by the metrics that he gave. And he's also envisions a world where governments are not very big or very powerful. They are kind of local opt-in councils that you can come and go as you please. I'm curious, what do you guys think of this brave new world that he proposed?
I mean, it sounds like a nightmare to me. Actually, it sounds like an absolute nightmare to me.
A nightmare. Please elaborate.
It sounds great to me. I mean, I'm gonna cut in. Yeah. No, we can't off the bat be like shit talking.
I'm very divided on it. Two sides of my brain going to war. So,
well, what are you divided on? What are you divided on?
So I really like the idea of. I suppose it's because we live in the world we do, where I think the government is bad at everything and overbearing in many ways. So there's like a knee jerk of like, yeah, get rid of it.
Okay, but where's the government good, right? Where's the government good though?
Oh, it's good in a lot of places. That's the other half of my brain, the non-intellectual part of my brain. So there's also that, and there's also the problem that I think it's important to bind people together under a shared sense of community, and that's easier to do when you have something like stability. Stability is really hard if you don't have some monopoly on force somewhere. So that's another idea. But again, these are all figments. These are all ideas. I want to bounce off all of you. So on one hand, I have my knee jerk. Yeah, I don't like the government. Yay, freedom. And on the other half of my brain, I'm like, stability is pretty important to community, and family is what's really important in the grand scheme. So those are kind of the ideas that I'm fighting with. Maybe they're not even maybe they're not contradictory. I don't know, but I want to.
I don't think government is contradictory with that whatsoever. Actually, I think the government is actually quite the embodiment of us as a people sharing our will and expressing it, instead of it being like an anarchy. We have found a way to organize it. We have found a way to deal with it, right? So.
I can't help but think that my first knee-jerk reaction is also kind of like, oh, that sounds cool, except for in practice those kind of things almost always go bad. I would imagine I'd put it in the same category as something like communism. It sounds great, like, and actually what you mentioned has a lot in common with communism. So like they think that essentially there's this idea about living in smaller groups and having smaller governments and those sorts of things. That's the idea behind it. But there's all sorts of issues. Entire industries that we rely on are heavily reliant on the government. As an example, the pharmaceutical industry, about something like 40% of all research and development is done on the taxpayers' dollars. We would have a near halt in medical advancements. We would lose some major things, like, for instance, space exploration, which I'm hopefully going to be having pretty soon. Avi Loeb is going to be coming on to have a conversation, a follow up with me. He's releasing a book, and I've got to go through it. But he's arguing that we absolutely have to have that kind of space travel. So those kind of things would be completely lost under a system like this if we started minimizing government and taking these things away. A lot of people would opt out and not want to pay taxes. I don't want to pay more money than I have to, right? But the sort of things that we get from that are huge payoffs. They're massive. None of us like it. I don't like it either. But at the end of the day, I prefer it over the alternative. So
So I'm going to agree with you at the beginning, and then I'm going to play devil's advocate for Breedlove on this second stuff, so this can be kind of fun. So I 100% agree about it, things going bad. I actually really like your analogy to communism. I brought this up. I told him, I'm pretty sure human nature is not conducive to this type of system that you're talking about. I was rather worried about that sort of thing. And what he told me is that he believes that human nature is like water, and it basically takes any shape that you pour it in. And if you pour it in this, violence-based type of society that he thinks the state is, then it will be violent and it will need that. But if you pour it into this completely consent and mutual aid-based society, then it will adapt. Now, I don't really believe that. I don't think human nature is infinitely mutable. But what he would say to your other concerns about pharmaceuticals and space industry is he would go back to Hayek and basically free market principles. And yes, originally the pharmaceutical industry and space exploration would come to a halt because it's been in bed with the government for so long. But I think he would argue that after a while, the market would do what the market does, and it would meet the demand and lower the cost and provide a supply. And just because currently those industries are reliant on the government doesn't mean they would be in a society where it's all market run. And the last thing you said, which I also agree with, by the way, but I'm playing devil's advocate here, is his whole thing is that there will be governments. They will just be voluntary. You will just have to like explicitly agree to them, like in writing. And then you also have to be able to leave at any time without the government punishing you for leaving. So I am curious, do you guys really think it would go all Mad Max if that's the way society worked? Because honestly, if we switch to that system right now, I'm pretty sure like 95% of people would just sign on the line of the country that they're already in. That's my theory.
Weird.
I mean,
No, I mean,
agree.
I'm a
Oh, go ahead.
rootless, like globalist, cosmopolitan. I like to go where I'm treated best. So yes, I want way more freedom to do that. Like when the like Westoid fucking governments decided to start locking us all up in our houses and like demanding like, a medical intervention in order for me to travel, I got out because I'm not down to be coerced like that. So I think that it would definitely empower people to push back on some really ridiculous schemes and coercion by the state.
But that's
Uh,
already the case, right?
well, I mean, the one problem that I think that Breedlove's kind of platform has is that, the backbone being cryptocurrency is highly dependent on like a super advanced technological society, like stability in that case, right? Power generation, server farms, etc. So like I do see Tart's point in the sense of like if you don't have a state apparatus that wants to manage that large infrastructure, like potentially your whole basis for this freedom might be compromised, right?
Yeah, Breedlove seemed convinced when I talked to him that all you really needed was a few computers, and as long as the internet was accessible, it would be fine. That's what he was telling me. Again, I'm not technologically savvy enough to like know if
No,
that's
it doesn't make any sense. But I think it's just arrogant to think that one can separate a society from its economy. And a part of that society is the way that we organize. And to think that like, oh, if people just opt in, when do you opt in? Do you opt in when you're 18 after you've born your whole life into a system that
how
you've benefited for, that has schooled you, that has educated you? At what point do you get to opt out of that system, out of that community? People talk about like, oh, the problem is in individuals. Well, it's individuals who do what? What's the individuals that are the problem? It's individuals that aren't even willing to actually cooperate and be a part of this entire project. They're unwilling to recognize the voices of people they disagree with. We say, no, I'm done. I don't want to be a part of this group because the majority has decided something through the democratic means that are foundation of this country are doing something we don't like. Because it's not like
I mean,
it's
you're positing like an economy that doesn't exist anymore. Like since globalization, the state doesn't have that form of sovereignty. Like there's nobody like pulling the levers anymore of like, for example, the US economy that is like that has anything to do with your government. Like that's being decided in back rooms by
so you
shadowy
think,
overlords, and you know it.
there's no shadowy overlords directly
Yes, there
controlling
is.
the economy.
They're
Okay.
not that
Absolutely.
shallowy. They're called the Fed, and they basically get to decide how much your savings are worth depending on how they feel when they wake up that morning.
Hey, Rumble.
That's
Don't you
something
love
he
me?
brought up. That's something he brought up. I don't know how to fix that. However, the fact that like the Fed gets to decide how much your savings are going to be worth based on like what they set the interest rates at and things of that nature. The
Well,
fact
how would we change that? Right, you would change that by voting, participating in the government.
yes, I am
having
not an
right.
If
So like,
voting changed anything that would make it illegal, like get real. That's so naive.
what
Well,
does voting
there
change?
is an argument to be made that like voting is actually really ineffective because right now, like it's not that we have like the shadow government. I don't believe in any of that or anything, but we do have a closer to an oligarchic system currently in America. Like right now, a lot of political scientists are saying that our system is shifting towards oligarchy, where basically the probability of you getting a bill passed if 100% of people agree with it is something like 30. It's like a 30% chance, and if zero people agree with it, it's also a 30% chance. But when you poll just for multimillionaires and the top 1%, those sorts of individuals, it suddenly becomes proportionate based on how many of them support it, whether or not it actually gets passed. That's an oligarchy. That's what oligarchy means. So it's like we do have an issue right now with voting, and I would like to see a shift away from those sort of issues. But
Well,
as it
I
is,
think those issues line up exactly about the issues that we have to care for. Right, it's developing into an oligarchy because of the weakening of the political power and the ability of power to even stop these people from acting in this way. This is Noam Chomsky's whole idea of anti-politics, where the idea is, oh, we're anti-politics, we're against the government, we want small government. But what's the opposite of a small government? How do we keep these millionaires and billionaires from controlling? They don't have borders, they don't even have states, they don't have communities. They transcend that. So when we say, oh, we don't want global cooperation, well, how are we going to deal with entities that don't have any boundaries? If we don't want federal involvement, how are we going to deal with institutions that are in between states? It's exactly these institutions that are stopping that from happening. But since Reagan's deregulation, that's what's been creeping up, and that's the result of that, weakening that power.
and at the end of the day, going back to what John's main topic here, the thing is that if we move to this sort of like a weakening of the government systems and it went to like a full free market, it would be essentially that we would go back to the dark ages in a sense, like in where I have an overlord now that someone who's very wealthy suddenly has a whole lot more power when there's not a government protecting me because I'm a little guy, right? And so usually the government, part of its role is to protect us. And to respond also to one point he made about sort of the free market going for exploration. If we need a simple exercise in futility on that end, we have Ocean Gate to look at, right? I mean, the errors they made were because there's no regulations where they are. The reason that implosion happened was because it had taken too many trips, and the carbon fiber and stuff that's in there was not designed to do that. And so, without the reason we've been so successful with things like space exploration is largely because the government does regulate those things and thinks about those things, and it's not just profit driven, right? There's no profit in it yet. There will be one day, hopefully, but as of now, there's not.
Well, I think there's a back half to this. I don't know about Ocean Gate specifically, but I do know that. Well, first of all, I agree that I'm not a freedom maximalist. That I think that's not going to happen, nor should it happen. I will say that a lot of the stuff that deregulation gets blamed for, that gets blamed on the private industry, while is them being immoral, is also often in response to state incentives, the like incentives that will bail you out. Like for example, I know that with Silicon Valley Bank, for example, they're comfortable taking those very high risk investments because they know the government's going to bail them out. In 2008, the reason why they bundled those horrible mortgages together was because they were too big to fail. So while a lot of it, yes, I agree, we could be doing more regulation on the front end. One of the real problems that has destroyed the ability to have an intelligent conversation about regulation and deregulation is the fact that the private and the public are so in bed together that we have this Frankenstein's monster where we can't tell what's doing what. It looks, in some instances, it might look like the private market is being very irresponsible, but they are. But they're only doing that because there's some government incentive over here that prevents them from eating the cost if things go bad. In my ideal world, we allow private industries to take their risks and be free, but we also make sure that they're allowed to actually fail and to eat the cost of failing. And we don't have that anymore in a lot of industries. And there's a reason for that, is to promote stability, but it also leads actually to those oligarchies where you
I don't
have
want to cut you off, John, but at this moment, we just have to remind the audience to like and subscribe.
so
Right?
true.
So true. It's just a fact. I've been getting nagged in by the overlords, the dark horse overlords, as Masha likes to call them.
No, the deep
about the real
state or the
oligarchy.
shadowy overlords.
The Illuminati, they're behind it all.
Oh yeah.
We're getting nagged by the Illuminati. We need to make this
Yeah.
announcement.
By the way, for
Don't
those who
even don't summon them. My God, they might start.
by the way,
watching.
for those who don't know, we are doing a giveaway. I believe it's two $50 gift cards to Audible or something like that. Exactly. It's a good giveaway. It's about $100 worth of things. It's somewhere, around that. So
For knowledge.
if you want to actually get and be a part of that, you just gotta join the Discord. Really, you have to leave a good comment. That's really the thing. Leave a good comment, ask a good question, be engaging, and then we'll select the comment that we think is best at the end of the show. And if you win, you're gonna go ahead and have to go on the Discord, tag an admin, and you'll win your prize. It's really that simple. This is the Pangburn Discord. I'm sure you can just Google it and find it. It's quite simple, or someone can drop it in the chat. One of the very many helpers that we have to thank us.
So I'm gonna drop the last thing from Breedlove that I thought was interesting because
Go
I think
for
it's a very strong challenge, although I think it's wrong. Essentially, Art, you were talking about how in a purely free market system you'd have an economic overlord. What Breedlove would say is that you already have one, and here's your choice. You can have a free market overlord where you can leave and you are in this arrangement completely consensually. He's not threatening you with violence, and he can't because you're in the inoffensive state of your choice. Or you can take this overlord, which is the government, which basically you have to pay taxes, what he would call protection money to. Otherwise, they will put you in jail. And those are different because one is consent based and one is monopoly on violence based. And I feel that that's a bit of an oversimplification. But when given that binary, I'm curious how you guys all feel about that. Do you feel that that's fair? Do you feel like there's something there?
Without even a shadow of a doubt, I would pick the government any
Yeah,
day.
100%.
If you have ever been under the boot of someone richer than you, if you've ever been, think about, we do it all the time at work. We have this overlord, this person who's running our life, right? And we have very little recourse against them. In fact, the only recourse that you have against these individuals is legal recourse, and that's it.
Sounds like the
Other than
federal.
that, they control your income. They can control where you live. Imagine if, like, for instance, we had a system.
Are you sure you're not describing the federal government right now?
Yeah, no, I'm positive that I'm not. They're not in my life like that. I don't know how many government agents you deal with, but I haven't seen one in a long time. So
That's true. I mean, if you're
Masha needs to back me up here.
oh Masha, you're
Yeah,
being
wait,
called.
don't you pay taxes? Like, don't you basically like slave away at your whatever, like wage, like earner style
They
job?
can kick you out of your house whenever they want.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's a minor inconvenience, and for the most part, the government just doesn't have that many actions in my personal life. It does have lots of effects around me that, for the most part, are positive, like just simply the roads, being able to have things like
Every
unemployment
single
insurance.
one of
I mean, all
us
of these
was
things.
educated. Every single one of us was educated.
Not I.
You weren't.
I mean, by this government.
Yeah,
or
that's
through
because
public
you had
funds
enough
income.
money. That's because you had enough money to not.
Friends.
Huh?
I have homeschool friends, but I guess the real question is that
Well,
let's
homeschooling
take
is
away-
not government neutral. We got to remember that homeschooling is absolutely not government neutral, right?
it should be.
It's not. It should be government neutral.
I support school choice, but that's just me. I feel like the real question here is less about the utilitarian aspect and more about just like the abstract principle aspect, which is like, do you want the people who have power over you to be holding that power due to the fact that they can impose violence on you and restrict your freedom, or do you want them to have power over you because you consensually agreed to a transaction? Like, pull away the utilitarian stuff, because I agree on the utilitarian level. I want us to try to just talk about like philosophically. Is there something there, or you guys still like think it's?
I mean, I think when you start arguing morals and philosophy, you're getting into a point where you're going to have to prove that's a truth, and that's a whole other problem. But before we complete, we can talk about this for hours. But of course, we have sections, and before we bore Thomas to death with politics, let's move into philosophy with Tart's philosophy shock.
Awesome. Do you want me to go straight into the name the trade argument, or do you want me to go to follow up with John's stuff? I'll just introduce the name the trait. So this is a recent interaction that I've had with a group of people. They're from a server called Ask Yourself. There's a guy named Isaac, and Isaac has created an argument for ethical veganism. Um, it's called Name the Trait. The idea is that it operates on essentially a dialectic. What you do is you're going to sort of during the conversation with a non-vegan, you're going to ask them to, hey, do you think that there's some distinguishing traits or a point if we were trait equalizing a human and a non-human animal? If we were to start swapping traits between them, would there be a point at which the human would lose significant enough value that it would no longer be unwarranted to kill and eat it or murder and eat it? Um, and I've been having these interactions for a little while with this crowd of people, um, and I pointed out a number of major problems with the argument. There's the idea that if we're supposed to be identifying, like when we're naming these traits, like what's the point of this exercise? If we're trying to identify the point, say between a human and a fish, at what point when I'm equalizing it with a fish that there's enough value is lost, can't I just talk about what traits give us moral value to begin with? Like, what is it about humanity and humans that give us that significant moral value? And I don't think that this argument really manages to get at that at all. Like, it never manages to really say, well, here are the things. Like, and it neglects entire natures of explanation. So let's say I'm trait equalizing a fish and a human. Um, it's significant enough for me to say, well, it's just because the human is human, right? And they go, "Oh, well, let me give you a reductio ad absurdum on that. We're going to say, let's say you have a Kryptonian who is, powerless. They look like a human, they walk like a human, they talk like a human, they seem human in every way, but they're actually not human. They're some other species, right?" Now, the problem here is that even if the explanation that I gave isn't an explanation for why I can't eat the Kryptonian, that doesn't follow that I failed to explain why I can't eat the fish, right? They're two distinct entities, and so the
Right.
explanations will likely be distinct. And in the same, it's sort of like an underdetermination issue, is what the way I phrase it. Like if I throw a rock at a window and John throws a rock at a window, and the window breaks because of one of the rocks, it's not in virtue of either one of the rocks. Neither of the rocks are the full explanation, but together they might be something like that. And so the explanations are just going to be, different for different entities. So just because I've not explained why I can't eat a Kryptonian, that doesn't follow I haven't explained why I can't eat the fish, and I have,
I mean,
right?
my biggest issue with the name the trade argument, and you and I have spoken about this before, is that it just doesn't actually map out the way humans react with moral propositions, with how we decide what is right and what is wrong. No,
Hmm.
no one just goes, does this have that trait? Does it have this trait? Does it have this specific trait that now it's morally valuable? Right? I find this people making this argument also with abortion. At what point does it become a life? All they're saying is what's the trait that makes it morally valuable. That's all they're doing. There's no difference in name the trait value for for abortion as there's
Great.
name the trait argument for an animal. At what point is it morally valuable? And that's what they're asking. At what
Hmm.
point is it alive? It's name the trait just for another place. And I see John wants to say something.
No, I'm just saying I agree. I think trying to pose like the arbitrary development of any certain trait being the end all be all is kind of silly, other than I suppose being alive. But even then, we have a certain amount of respect for our dead as well. So yeah, I agree. I think it was enlightening to me that you brought up the point that it doesn't have to be the same principle that justifies it in both cases. I think that's
Yeah,
very
why would we need that?
right.
Why would we expect that to be the case? Like I could put you on an island with me and Don, and we might if we had nothing else to eat, we'd probably be hunting each other, right? So there's going to be some explanations that are going to be different based on the context, based on different things, and there's no reason that those sort of things need to be generalizable. We don't need to be able to take those principles or those traits and go, if something lacks these, then it's not morally valuable. That's just not the way I think we think about it. And to Don's point, there was a really smart guy named Shadow Starshine who made this point too. If we took two paintings and we go, and I think one is beautiful and one is ugly, right? do we sit there and go, well, if I just swap the traits, how do I determine whether or not one of the paintings is beautiful? No matter what trait I name, I'm probably going to be wrong about it at some point, right? Like, I'm probably going to be wrong just because, like, if it's like, oh, it's blue. Well, if a painting is blue, is it beautiful? No, not necessarily, right? There's no specific thing that's making that happen. It's more like almost like an emergent feature that the painting is beautiful. And there's not going to be some like simplistic explanation as to why any given singular thing is beautiful. Like the reason a piece of music is beautiful is totally different than the reason that a painting is beautiful, and the reasons that different paintings are beautiful are going to be different as well. I don't find that we need to have that generalizability about these things, and so it's not that I hate vegans or hating on veganism or anything like that.
That's
It's I
okay.
did, it's more so just that this argument is bad. And the interlocutors from these servers are also problematic. And Don pointed out to me that there was one guy who had this video he made, um, where basically he said that I was running from the discussion with him. And he was in the video he bans me, and then he characterizes that as me running, and I'm like, that's the kind of bad faith we don't want um, at the Pangburn universe, right? Like that's what we're all against, and that's super bad faith.
Real.
Of course, it's super. I mean, I love meat too, so you're gonna have a hard time convincing me there's no ethical way for me to find a chicken and eat it, right? Like, I'm gonna eat a chicken. There must like, what if it's just dead? What if it just died? I can't eat it then. What if it just does its thing and it's been domesticated over thousands of years? Now it lays eggs that are not necessarily fertile. Can I not eat them? Right? My cow now needs milking. Can I not, milk it?
There's something to be said that the modern like meat industry and the way we do giant mechanized farming now I find deeply immoral. But it's not because animals are feeding us or nourishing us. It's just because we're doing it in a way that feels unnecessarily cruel and imposes an unnecessary amount of suffering. But
Yeah. I agree. I
uh,
agree, but there's ways to like, there's I mean for myself I try to consume meat like ethically. But
yep.
like my whole issue with this like proposition is first of all who brought it forward, because I can honestly guys, like I can watch environmental activists and like vegans getting like run over all fucking day. I don't I mean,
Oh, real. Yeah.
I just
I
True.
think.
like
Do you
they're
mean
doing
literally run over, or just like run over
no, just
metaphorically?
like a little bit, like not
Just a little
killed,
bit.
but like
Just a
just a
little
little
bit.
bit. I
Just
mean,
Okay.
if they're
moderately
getting into
maimed, or
just
what
like
was the
yeah,
Dobby quote?
Art
Just
is
like
not here.
if
moderately maimed.
if they're gonna fuck
Art
around,
is
they're gonna
not,
find out. That's really what
Oh,
it
Art
okay.
is.
is
Good for
not here
them.
to hate on vegans specifically, but I am.
Yeah. And so my other
Yeah.
point here would be that like I'm like James Kirk. Like if there's a life form and I can fuck it, it's probably not something I'm gonna eat.
I don't. I don't
that's
think the
that's kind of
rule.
like, you know what I mean? Like that's the dividing line. If it's
I
like
was
if
just
it has a
finding the word
consciousness and
"scam."
it can consent to some form of sex, and even better if like there's genetic
I mean,
compatibility,
that's the trait, right?
probably not
You
gonna care.
named the trait,
I
sexually
did.
attractive.
Sexual
Well,
compatibility.
But
can you? Would you? And can
can
you?
you? Can you and would you?
That I don't. That's too loose of a line for me. I think "and" like is a very low
Right,
bar.
but this highlights the fact that
Consensually, like
people
can
don't
you?
make moral determinations by defining a trait. We don't make moral determinations by just giving something an arbitrary signifier of now it's morally valuable. Oh, it's not morally valuable anymore. Like, when Tart and I were talking about the trolley problem the other day, and it's like, for those who don't know, it's something along the lines of you're standing on a bridge and you have a lever to pull, and if you pull the lever, the train is going to move away from running over from running over four people, and is going to go ahead and run over one person. Right? What's the right thing to do? What's the wrong? It's a philosophical question that is asked often to like
I can
101
tell.
freshmen in college or something,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it's not there to be answered, because there's not necessarily a right or a wrong answer here to the question, right? You might not have the answer; it might not exist. And the goal of philosophy here is to actually reconceptualize the paradigms to be able to make this question feasible or make sense in any uh, right way. So
And the trolley problem actually illustrates the plurality of explanations that I'm going for there. So, for instance, most people are going to say, I'm going to pull the lever to save the four and kill the one. And they go, well, and you ask for the explanation. You say, well, because there's four people on the other track, and I don't want those four people dying. But then when we shift the argument to, say, for instance, a doctor, you're now a doctor, and that you have four dying patients. They're all going to die, and you have one healthy person who happenstantially is a perfect match to donate their organs to each of these people, right? And now your explanation for the previous instance, right? That explanation seems like it would lead you to believe that you should, for instance, take the organs from that one person and put it into the four people, right? But most of us go, no, that's wrong. We shouldn't do that. And so that doesn't mean that you're wrong that about pulling the lever. It means that the explanations aren't just generalizable like that in a very
Well,
simplistic way.
I've never really liked that comparison because doctors are subject to moral strictures that are very different from that of the layman who is suddenly on the train tracks. I would argue. There's another version which is that there's only one track. You're on a bridge on top of the track, and it's going to hit four people. And you could stop it, but you'd have to push an old lady and her wheelchair off the bridge because that'll stop the trolley problem. And just instinctually, I've never met a person who doesn't feel worse about pushing the old lady than they do about pulling the lever to hit the one.
well,
Just
that was
because you
found
have
that,
to be pushing off.
but that's empirically verified by psychological experiments.
Oh, is
So
that?
people just yeah. This is the thing. We learn about this when we learn about psych, because it's precisely the fact that this is the moral calculus isn't simply rational. Like, let's not get lost in a cerebral fluid and forget that we are moral creatures. We create morality. We're not going to find it out somewhere in the universe by pulling it. It's not like a thing that exists
I think it's
independent
true.
of my mind. It's not independent of my mind. It's entirely mind dependent. This
Well,
concept of rightness and wrongness.
I disagree with you there.
You
It's definitely
disagree with me there.
definitely not.
I'm gonna join John on this one. I'm a moral realist, and that's probably
But
a
I'm a,
strange one.
okay. You're gonna do the whole "it's truth" app thing that you do, Tart.
I
Does
do.
does
Yeah.
that mean that it exists independent of the mind?
Well, so realism doesn't necessarily mean mind independence in under some views. So the idea is like um, more so realism is about what makes the proposition true, right? So if it's exhaustively made true by your attitudes, your desires, those sorts of things, that's what I usually mean when I say like subjective or relativistic. So like if it's a culture making it true, then it's relativistic to the culture, right? If it's the agent's attitudes exhaustively making it true, then then it's going to be subjective. I just don't think that individuals, I don't think that the explanations given by subjectivists or relativists of any species are very strong. There's lots of other options. You could be a quietist, you could be a non-cognitivist. I'm a realist. So what I mean when I say realism is I think that moral proposition are true. That at least some of them obtain. They're semantically contentful, so they're going to have, so they're propositional, so they express that the sort of things that can be true, and then some of them actually obtain in a way that is not dependent entirely or strictly on our individual uh, like just desires or proclivities or something like that. I just don't think that makes a whole lot of sense, and most of us will sort of balk at the kind of will be pulled back by some of the implications there, like
Yeah, yeah.
at you know. I don't want to go into all of them because some of them might not be content friendly, but there's some really disgusting ones.
There
Um,
are. But I don't disagree. I don't disagree that moral propositions are truth apt. But I
mhm.
just think that I'm specifically just talking about the fact that they are intersubjectively real, and maybe we can discuss that at another time. As
There's
opposed
just
to, like,
not.
gender to me is intersubjective, yet it's real. Um, but it's still mind dependent. So
You're so wrong. You're so wrong.
it could be. It could be.
I think it's mind dependent in the sense that if there are no agents whatsoever, then there's not going to be any moral propositions that obtain. Like I think that most people can agree on. The rest of it is the big part that I think both John and myself are going to quickly go. Like the closest to a relativist view that I think is a decent one is what's called is constructivism. Some constructivists are like robust realists and some are not. And I think that there's robust versions of it, similar to how like mathematics or science, these things are they're so useful. They're such
I
incredible
agree.
tools, but they're constructed. That doesn't mean that there are like for instance there are right ways and wrong ways to do mathematics, right? and you can be wrong about 2 plus 2 being 5, despite the fact that there's not this like platonic realm where there's these numbers out there just
But I
hanging
agree
out in the
with that. But
ether,
I agree with that.
right?
I'm not.
And
I'm not.
so,
I'm not saying no to that. I'm not saying. I'm
yeah.
just trying to remind people that you're not going to find the truthness or rightness of a thing by observing its mechanical properties.
No, I'm on
I
board
agree.
with that one. I'm not a naturalist in the reductive sense, if that's what you're
Yeah,
trying to get at there. I'm definitely not
that's
that.
what I was trying to get at.
You can find some
Yeah.
I think you can find some suggestions, but no, you're never going to be able to get a moral claim from the material universe alone. That's not a thing.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I've always liked to just kind of cut the Gordian knot on the trolley problem, though, just very quickly, Don,
No
which is that
problem.
there's no wrong answer. There's just different types of acceptable answers. The one who's really in the wrong is like the prick who tied them to the tracks in the first place, because I have like this underlying resentment towards thought experiments that are like kind of unrealistic or in a vacuum, because the answer is outside the experiment, which is like which way is wrong, the guy who tied them to the tracks, and you're just making the best of a bad situation. And
Well, we have two things. We got two things we got to do now. I'm seizing control.
Okay.
We got two things we got to do. One thing is we got to move to Thomas's section, because
Real.
we're losing Thomas there with politics and things that he just absolutely couldn't give two fucks about whatsoever. Thomas is, but before that, there's someone who is going to come and join us, give us a little caller experience, but they can't. So it's a question for you, John, and I'm going to put it up as a banner. And maybe you'll read it. I think you should read it, actually. I think you should absolutely read it. Yeah.
Okay, you're gonna give me something to read. I've been talking.
Oh, it is very small, but I'll read it for you. I'll read it for you.
No,
I think you can't. I think it's too long. It's just such a long question. But it's like this: what is your opinion regarding your opinion about social pressures effects like unionizing to affect business controls rather than existing government organization? Haven't entirely new governments been formed entirely through social pressure, completely outside of existing powers?
You're asking me this? I'm
Yeah.
sorry. One, I'm having trouble understanding exactly what.
Let
you
me
want.
also. I'll also send it to you in a
Rephrase.
message. We'll do two things.
We'll just rephrase.
Yeah, I'll send it to you in a message, and I'll ask it one more time.
Yeah.
What is your opinion? You can read it now. Here, you have the control. You're live. Go ahead. You read it out loud for everyone.
Ask Mr. Parker from somebody. I don't know who this is from. What is your opinion about social pressures effects like unionizing to affect business controls rather than existing governmental organizations? I'm not sure what the back half means, but I'm totally cool with private sector unions. You have labor. You get to control it. If you want to band together with your friends and all act in lockstep, totally cool. You should have bargaining power against your employer. I think when you get to public sector unions, it gets a little bit weird because you're offering public services and you're also bargaining against the taxpayer. I see both sides of that argument. That's weird. But private sector unions, I'm 100% in agreement. Haven't entirely new governments been formed entirely through social pressure? Social pressure is one way of putting it. I think there's social violence maybe. Completely outside of existing powers. Like, yeah, violent revolution is a thing. New governments have been formed. Yeah. I'm not really sure everything this question is trying to ask, but private sector unions are fine. I agree with that. Who's that from?
I don't know who that's from. I just got it sent to me.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's the answer. That's my answer anyway.
Okay.
Yeah. I think public pressure, like social pressure, I would prefer that over government intervention in most cases if I could have the choice. I would say that it's less intrusive. There's less rights problems, and it's more organic instead of like top-down imposition on what the culture should be, like bottom-up expression of what the culture is dictating behavior. I mean, that's the idea of the market, and you can't have them. You can't have just the market. It's too chaotic and it's wrong. But if we could favor it a little bit,
It's
a little bit
interesting
more than
that
we're doing right now would be nice.
it's interesting that I think a lot of the sort of right-leaning people that I'm aware of tend to say something like that they're fine with these sort of social pressures. But then when we go to like the culture war that's been raging for basically forever, somebody gets deplatformed, and everyone goes, "What? That's not fair! No, that shouldn't be happening. They shouldn't be allowed to do that." And it's like, well, but if you get silenced on the sort of social stage, so to speak, that's the kind of social thing I think that you're kind of pointing to there that you should
Right.
be okay with.
Well,
Yeah,
like,
but then at the same time,
exist.
it becomes like a fact that, oh, but we should have the right to fire you if we don't like your gender identity, or we have the right to fire you if we don't like. But if you have a differing political ideology, oh, no, that's out of the hands of the government. That should be allowed in the free market.
Well, I think you should be able to. I mean, I'm kind of an extremist about this. I think you should be able to fire for basically anything. And I think that if you fire people for like stupid reasons and like evil reasons, your business is going to go.
Well, that's the law. Who decides what is evil and what is good. How do we go about doing that? That's government.
Right. It would also. I think it would also be the fact that even if there was no law banning it, if somebody got like fired purely because of their race and that hit national news, that business is out of business so goddamn fast. Not because the government told you to, but because we have moral standards. But to answer your question, Tart, just because I think it's okay that it's exercised doesn't mean I'm always going to like how it's exercised every time. The counter push is also part of social pressure. And it also depends on the private entity, right? Because, there's entities that are private and are actually private, and we can say, oh, that's bad. But there's also entities that work hand in glove with the government, and then people are concerned that it's the government using this private entity to do this thing. So it really does depend on the specifics. But I think the general response is that just because I agree that you can do that and that it's okay for you to do that, doesn't mean I'll always like how you use that ability. I think, freedom to do stuff I don't like is important.
It's a fair point. At least you're being upfront and honest
Well,
about it. Like, hey, I don't like it, but it's
Thomas's torture time. It's gonna
Thomas torture time. Let's do it.
We can't do it, Thomas. Let's go.
Thomas is putting up with us.
You can shut up. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. Torture Time is just a show I made up, just a stupid name, because I like to torture myself with information and reread it and beat it to death and philosophically analyze it from inside out and in every possible way that I can, humanly possible. So on call-in, besides the guests that I have, we usually, on my shows, well, we started with logic series, and then we went to epistemology, and then we went to linguistics and semantics. And I thought this would build a good foundation for us to understand science, the scientific method, the philosophy of science, things like that. So we're going to cover the philosophy of science on tomorrow's Torture Time. We'll have the regulars, Don, if he can make it, and Perry, one of our regulars that'll be on there. Anybody else, of course, who wants to join us, please do. I don't want to give too much away about the show. I can read a quick overview of what the philosophy of science is, but you want me to do that? Okay. It's just notes and paraphrasings and stuff. So basically, guys, the philosophy of science, it's the branch of philosophy that's concerned with like the foundations of knowledge, the methodologies of knowledge, and like the implications within science of understanding those methodologies. So the central questions are basically what qualifies as science, the reliability of scientific theories and what they mean, and the ultimate purpose of science. If there is one, or if we can argue about what the state of affairs is epistemologically. So the discipline overlaps with metaphysics, ontology, epistemology, obviously. Like when it explores the relationship between science and truth, or science and justification. It definitely focuses on the metaphysical, epistemic, and semantic aspects of science. And yes, there are semantic aspects of science, which is weird. There are also ethical issues that kind of tie in with the philosophy of science, like bioethics and scientific misconduct in scientific papers, things like that. But those are considered different studies, a little bit outside of the frame of reference of philosophy of science. Obviously, there's no... Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna add that, keep going. There's no consensus.
Oh, you're good.
I was gonna bring up Kuhn because when I learned philosophy of science, I found Thomas Kuhn to be such an integral figure into like this idea of paradigm shifts.
Yeah, I was actually getting to that. Thomas Kuhn's 1962 book, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions, was formative, challenging the view of like scientific progress as like a steady cumulative acquisition of knowledge thing based on all these scientific methodologies. He argued that any progress in science, in the scientific endeavor, is relative to like a paradigm or a set of question concepts and practices that define a scientific discipline of like a particular history period. So historical period. So just the paradigm of that scientific, of that ethos of the science of the particular history period. That's what he thought it was. So yeah, we will cover Kuhn, we'll cover Karl Popper, Bertrand Russell.
What do you want to
Uh,
talk about right now? Which topic of science do you want to talk about right now?
which topic of science do we want to
Yeah,
talk
the
about?
philosophy of science. What's the point? Give us like a short little point. What is
A,
it? So
a
we can
short
all
little
engage in it.
point. Uh, well, like, it's, can science reveal the truth about unobservable things like quantum mechanics and um, like planets we've never seen, things like that, unobservable things? Can we trust the mathematics and our scientific method to give us accurate representations of those unobservables?
You know, the thing that this brings to mind is the sort of miracles analogy. Like there are philosophers out there who think that it basically would be miraculous. Say, for instance, if the unobservables, like because we can't directly observe, very small like, particles and things like that. Some things are too small for light to be able to bounce off of, and so we can't. We just so we have these models that kind of we think approximate those entities, but it would be the idea is that if we could be wrong, right? It's at least conceivable that it's wrong, but the mere success of scientific explanations would be damn near miraculous if we were just so off base. So, like, say for instance, if we're talking about scientific anti-realism, the idea that science doesn't actually get at these entities, and we're just wrong about that. One argument for it is goes like so. So, say there's this thing called miasma theory. So back in the day when we had the plagues and things like that, some people thought that there was this thing called miasma that would get into our systems and make us sick. And this explanation led people to do this thing where they would burn incense and they would what some cities even built these big bonfires to chase out the miasma, and it worked because it chased out the mice and the rats who had the fleas that caused the plague would flee from these fires. So they were wrong about the explanation, but the things they did in response to that explanation were effective. And so the scientific anti-realist says, well, what if we're just massively wrong? We're just happenstantially getting things right. And the realist responds by saying, well, it would be a miracle if we got so many things right on a wrong explanation.
I
It would
think there are
be like
more.
Jesus.
I don't. I don't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
You're good.
Um, I think there are more positions in anti-realism, like where I tend to sit, which is right on the edge of anti-realism, which would be, social constructivism, or in the philosophy of science, constructivism in itself. Um, and that I guess I can explain it. Let's see. I don't want to be wrong here, so we'll just look it up. uh, bear with me.
I know nothing about this, but I would say that what Tart brings up is an idea of being able to be functionally right about something while maybe not getting at its true essence, whatever that is. I think that's kind of the idea of metaphorical truth that people who are like, let's say our favorite lobster king JBP and then Sam Harris have argued about and stuff like that. It's interesting how there's like real overlap there. How there's
Yeah, they did talk about the specific notion of truth.
Well, Matt. Well, it does raise the question: is like, what is true precisely? Is true what works, or is true what is like
I have
observed?
so many episodes
What
on
do you
that.
mean by is? What do you mean by
Oh,
mean? What do you mean?
Matt.
yeah, yeah,
Yes.
It would take me 40 years to
Yeah.
answer such a question.
Yeah.
He's not wrong. It is
Real,
complicated
real.
question.
No, but
Yeah,
Here, I'll
John,
give you
you know,
another
when he-
example. I want to give you another example because, like, it's something I was looking at recently. So there's this really old book called Dere Metallica, and it's a kind of like manual for how like early metal workers made swords. And in it is described a ritual where when you're creating a sword, you like one of the sort of like magical rituals that makes it strong and sharp and like resistant to breakage is that you run it through the back of a slave, and so that makes the perfect sword. And what in effect is happening there is that the steel is being
Quenching.
tempered. Yeah, so that but there's like so many rituals like that have like brought us into our current like state of development. And not, I mean, I'm not sure if like we've looked into all of them, right? Like the also like the restrictions against eating certain foods that made sense potentially in like certain desert environs, but no longer. The fact of like swine no longer being, you know, completely full of trichinosis, things like that. So yeah, I'm interested in such phenomenon. And like, if we like, where did that come from? Like, can you even begin to imagine how many things that swordsmith would have tried? Or is it like some sort of divine inspiration? Or is it like, where do those rituals come from? Because we don't know the science. We can't like procedurally follow through on like the foundational concepts that make that work. Where, like, how do they come to us like, you know, a human civilization?
Uh, that is a very good question. Thomas, if you have stuff, interrupt us at any time
Oh
because
no, you're fine. Go ahead. I'm learning by
Yeah,
listening. It's
I, I,
fantastic.
I don't I don't know where it necessarily comes from. I don't even know if it matters exactly where it comes from. I think
Right.
what matters is and this is where I really have a real soft spot for the American pragmatists, like Charles Pierce and William James specifically, where truth, I don't like to think about it as, like we said, something that's there, but like especially in science, like we have experiment, we have data, we have theory, and then we have, can we apply it? Does this open doors rather than close them for us? Are these concepts that we're developing enable me to make sense of more things, enable me to manipulate more things in reality, enable me to create new endeavors and create open up the creative envelope of like human possibility? um, I think that a lot of times we think that we have an idea and it makes sense to us, and what it does really is it closes a circle. It goes, ah, we get it now. It all makes sense. God did it. Why is a tree outside? God did it. Why did the master decide to quench his sword in the slave's back? And we find something, but something we just don't know the answer. But the answer should maybe lay in when we go, how do we predict human behavior? How we understand human reasonings? And I think that's something that the scientific method survives on, right? It's people documenting their findings, and then those findings leading to something else, leading us to new adventures, new ideas, uh, new paradigms, as Kuhn would say it.
Well, the scientific method is itself a kind of ritual, and you know, where did the
Yeah.
inspiration for that ritual come from? You know.
Well, I mean, we can look back in the Enlightenment philosophy, early modern philosophy. During that time, we can start seeing that scientific revolution, all the thinking that was there. We know a big part of it was, hey, maybe the best way to learn about God is to study the natural world as opposed to studying his book. They're both his creations. We know
Right.
Galileo spoke about this.
Yeah.
So maybe the inspiration does come from there.
Yeah,
But
who's to say it isn't from God? Like, how can you prove it isn't? You can't prove
I
a
want
negative.
to point. I want to give something that I've been thinking about this a lot, which is true. It's can we apply this to reality? I think that's a good kind of pragmatic definition of truth, but I think it begs another question, which is application in reference to what ultimate goal. And I think that is the kind of value proposition that feels kind of a priori that you're going to have to figure out before you can understand what's true. So, and I think that's true for a lot of morality propositions as well. I realize I'm being very abstract right now, and not being very specific at all. But basically, it's like if something is true, if it works, then it means works towards what? Like a bridge, our math and our physics and our material engineering works when we put it in a bridge. How do we know that it works? Because the bridge stays up. Why does that mean that it works? Because we want people to be able to get where they want to go. We want things to last when we build them, and we don't want people to die. But all those are value propositions that cannot be proven in like a scientific sense. They're just like an a priori kind of value assumption.
As
So,
a
yeah.
I was going to say, as a quick critique of this idea of truth that you're sort of laying out,
Please.
while I'm empathetic to I am empathetic to pragmatic definitions of truth, like for instance from Pierce or something like that. But if we say something like truth is something that is useful and applicable to reality, well, most of the time when we discover something, it has zero use at first. We oftentimes find things that we don't even know what its use is, and then suddenly later on we find a use for that piece of information, right? So was it
For example,
was it not true? So
I'd be
I'm
cool
trying
with
to think of a.
accepting that consequence, by the way. I'd be totally cool with accepting
I
the
also want to say that
consequence. Is it true
pragmatism
or
doesn't
not?
just talk about material usefulness or usefulness at all. Because
Mhm.
something pragmatic is not necessarily useful. That's an important thing to understand. Pragmatic doesn't just mean useful. Things can
Oh,
be conceptually pragmatic. It can have conceptual utility, the ability to make better or worse schemas. Uh,
better or
Or
worse.
aesthetic utility.
okay,
That's
instead of
also
saying
valuable.
sure,
True.
instead of saying better or worse, I would say schemas that enable us to further our exploration, right? As
Sure,
opposed
but
to
but
lock it
again,
into a circle, as opposed to say, oh, we have the solution and now we're done. We answered the question. If we think we've answered the question, we're long gone. You've lost it.
well,
It,
see, that's your a priori value assumption.
it is
It's
because I
like
don't think that we
the
have direct
schema.
knowledge of
So
reality.
it is about use then, right? It's pragmatically useful if it allows you to keep exploring, or however you would prefer to
Yeah,
phrase
but
it.
because we don't have direct knowledge of reality, right? Reality is not a certain. Again, I'm
No,
very
sure,
much a
sure.
constructivist, and we construct a lot of our notions. So we're always going to be in places of learning exploration. Why do we have the like? I think people in ancient Greece thought they had it figured out. Why would we say that it's not
We
figured
we
out?
did have it figured out.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh,
they're probably right about a lot of things, actually. But this, just to put a tiny bow on it, just because I had the last thing, which is you can believe that lots of truths are kind of relative and pragmatic, relative to what works or what your goal is, but that means that you have to have a goal that is kind of um, almost unapproachably true to have as kind of your point of reference when determining the truth of everything else. Something, it's not exactly platonic realm, but something like that. You have to have your value assumptions that do have to be capital T truth in order to assess the truth
why?
in every other aspect, because truth
Why?
is only understood, in my view, as being its usefulness or non-usefulness relevant to your goal, and your goal has to be an a priori assumption, and it has to be a capital T truth outside of normal fields of analysis.
What if we reject the notion of capital T
Well,
truth? We
then
bite the
you
Cartesian bullet. We say Descartes was right. We can't know. We just can't. He couldn't
because
Yeah,
make
you
things
don't
fact
see,
though.
that's why there's a meaning crisis, because there's too many people like you just
true,
sort of like
real.
it's
Then
so
I
super
disagree. I
self-indulgently just
disagree.
playing with this intellect.
No, I think
Just
that
because we have
we
the
Thomas
have
is shaking
to.
capacity
his
to
head like
make
I'm an idiot.
everything, mean nothing, and everything means everything. It's so postmodern. It's so boring.
It's so great.
Oh,
Asha's my favorite person. Okay, Thomas looks like he's upset with me, so I really want to. Well, I don't know what I'm talking about, right? Like
Well,
that's
I
the
think John, you end up being kind of a subjectivist in a sense. Like you're a subjectivist about truth. Like that's a huge type of relativism. Now, I think that
well,
I lean something
no,
closer to like a
not as
pluralist about
relativistic
truth.
as you think I am, because I think those a priori goals are capital tree truths that apply to everybody. So I'm not really subjective.
Well, but
well, you're not talking.
capital T truth. So you're gonna have to go like a pluralist position as well, because you're gonna have to have some other kind of way in which those are true outside of their usefulness, right? So what way are they true that is not their usefulness?
In the unapproachable, ineffable, kind of divine way is the best I'm able to come up with so far. Check back with me in a few years, and
We'll get back to it then. Okay,
Okay.
I lean pluralist. I think that I think that there's like lots of different kinds of truths, and so I take a little bit of a deflationary position on it. We all have this idea that there's this one big thing. It's the truth, the big fact that it's
Mm-mm.
just true, and I don't think that that's the case. There's different ways in which something can be true, and a lot of these different ways in which they are true converge. So, for instance, Pierce would say something like truth is the is what a rational being given enough time and resources to research this. Truth is the thing that that rational agent will come to the conclusion of, right? Um, and then but the correspondence theorist isn't necessarily going to disagree with that. They would think that a rational agent would come to this conclusion. They just don't think that's the defining feature. And think of like even the concept, getting back to Thomas's thing, science. Science is going to be like this process of testing and experimentation, and so there's this sort of pragmatic thing. Like, well, if it works, then it's true, right? That's sort of this pragmatic assumption behind experimentation, and yet we assume that it gets at correspondence types of truth where it's actually pointing to some sort of truth in reality. And so there's this convergence of different kinds of truths, and I think that's a defining feature of truth, is that it is pluralistic. There's lots of different kinds of truths, and we're wrong that it only points to one thing, but it's because it's truth. The ideas create sort of this illusion that that's the case.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more with that.
I think that I don't know if that's correct or not, but I do know if that's accepted at a societal level where there's no such thing as capital T truths that are uniting, that everybody's truth is just as good as everybody else's. I'm pretty sure that's how you break societies and you break culture.
But I think that's being. I think
Masha,
that's.
Masha knows what I'm talking about. Masha pointed it. Masha
But
said,
I think that
"You're doing it right now."
that is already I think the problem is that we have people who think they have the capital T truth, and these little enclaves are consistently bickering with each other, thinking they got it right. Maybe if all these groups recognize that it's just one perspective, it's one of the pluralist positions, they can start working together and recognizing that, and take a little back seat to their hubris, not get so lost in the cerebral fluid.
If everyone was just as humble as I was, and we
I'm
just
not
agreed on
humble.
my
I'm
position.
absolutely not humble.
There's no such thing as neutrality. Like even you, like your capital T truth is.
I don't believe in a capital T truth.
Well, there's
you
no
do.
compromise on that,
Well,
right?
the
If you
way to
believe in a
define-
capital T truth, there
I
isn't
could be
any
wrong.
compromise
Well,
possible.
the
I
way
could be
you
wrong.
define pragmatism is it being useful for further exploration and understanding. Like that, even itself, is an a priori value assumption.
Sure, but that value assumption, I'm not saying is capital T truth.
Well, you're acting as if it is.
No, I'm
At
not.
the very least.
When did I act as if it was?
The fact that you just said it and you act in accordance with
I'm saying that I think that the way we should conceive of truth is that way, but I'm not asserting that it is the case. I'm
No,
asserting that
but-
this is the way we should organize because I
you
believe
live
it
your
leads to the
life?
best result.
Do
Huh?
you live your life as if that proposition was true?
Do I live my life? No, I don't.
Really?
Yeah, because there's some. If I live my life as entirely a useful pragmatist, there will never be moments where I decide to take the wrong way home or whatever it is.
I'm not asking you to be like a thought experiment. I'm saying like largely.
Largely, do I believe that the best we should conceive of truth in such a way? Yeah, absolutely. But
Right.
that doesn't mean that is my capital T truth.
No, I understand.
If you're doing the Jordan Peterson thing,
I
where it's like,
know,
what's
I
your
know.
God?
I'm trying
You're
to
doing the Jordan Peterson, what's my
I'm
God?
trying to
That's
do it
not
in
my
a more
God.
intelligent way. I'm trying to do it more. My point is that if everybody has a let's say potential capital T truth that they largely act in accordance with, even if they're like you and they're not like 100% convinced. If all these different people in this society all have different conceptions of what their ultimate goals and a priori assumptions are, and they're acting that out, that leads to a level of disunity that I find difficult to deal with.
Well, people can act out their beliefs. I mean, they should. We should politically act out our beliefs, right? Even though we should know that you might disagree with me, but we still live in a community. We should also recognize that things that I might believe are capital T truth, like there's tons of them. Like some people believe that blacks are less superior or inferior to white people. That's their capital T truth. What if they just fought that day and nail instead of recognizing, hey, I might not be right here and I should include the other perspectives?
No, nobody's positing that like these like specific particular truths are true. We're just positing the fact of the existence of a capital T truth. Also, like John, you have to know that engaging with these postmodernists is difficult because their arguments are deliberately incoherent. Like
I wouldn't say incoherent.
What's interesting is nobody's presented anything that's postmodern so far. Actually, the closest to postmodernism was actually John's. Funny enough. So what I presented, pluralism about truth, is going to encompass types of truths that you might call capital T truth, because I don't even know what most people are trying to get at. Probably something like correspondence theory or like maybe Aristotelian notions of truth. But that nothing I've said or that Don has said is massively postmodern. Like, and there's not even a lot of postmodernists that like play this wishy-washy game with truth. Usually they're just like the kind of things that we're talking about here are just like, hey, look, it's what Churchland would call capturing a folk notion, right? So like the capital T truth, that thing, it would fail to capture the folk notion of what when we say the term true. It's pretty easy to see that would end up happening because there's lots and lots of examples. There's this objection called the funny facts objection. So like Darth Vader has a lightsaber. Is this a capital T truth? Well, it's true that Darth Vader has a lightsaber, but lightsabers don't exist. Darth Vader's not a thing. He's a fictional character, right? And so there's these kinds of things, there's these weird facts. And so we need a theory of truth. If you're going to go with like a single notion of theory of truth, some unifying sense of true, you're going to need to be able to have a notion of truth that captures facts like that. Because there's a sense in which Darth Vader has a lightsaber, and there's definitely a sense in which that's not a thing. Like, so
I think I'm overcomplicating in my language. All I'm saying is that it's important for people who share a community to have shared underlying basic values. Like Don, you said that like we should all be okay with our capital T truths being different because we all have to coexist in a community. Hate to do this to you, buddy, but the importance of community is also an a priori like value assumption, and that's
But
really.
I'm not saying it's not. But I'm
No.
not saying that it's not, and I don't think that contradicts my notions.
All I'm really saying is that people need to be able to have shared baseline values if they want to live.
But I don't disagree with you. Like, I come from the
Yeah.
Jewish community. I'm a secular Jew. I don't even believe in the thing. I consider myself a secular atheist Jewish person, right?
You're fun.
Right.
Yeah.
Very, very easy, middle of the line, boring New York trope. Okay, fine. I fall in that department. But does that mean that like my community always agree on this notion of truth? We don't.
No,
But we
sure.
support each other, right? When my family is in need, that community will come. And so I will also show up to those communities around me. But I don't think that we need to share this capital T notion of reality. We might believe in share common values and common things, but there's going to be people from across the country who I disagree with, and yet we still share a federal government to cooperate and live in this free society. I just don't see why we need to have this specific thing.
This is the sticking point. I think if a country doesn't have shared values and is united by nothing that other than its force wielding government, that's a bad society. That's a society that needs help. They should at least share one value, like helping those in need who are part of your family, which, by the way, is a value that you share with your community, that you at least act most of the time as if it's true. And I think that if people are going to live in a society together, they need to have some common ground, some underlying shared assumptions. Because if they don't, then they're just united by this overlording force.
Yeah, but why would we call? But why, from a conceptual philosophical perspective, would we call that capital T truth?
That's a good question. Because if you don't think your underlying values are true, then why are you following them?
But we think they're true, but we just don't believe it's the ultimate truth. That there could be other truths. Why is that?
You're getting to the realm where I to be honest with you.
Okay.
I don't know. I can't help but keep pointing out that I think that it feels as though John is the postmodernist here. Like you're talking about these values being especially true. I thought when you talked about when I talk about capital T truth, if I was going to conceptualize it, it's going to be like correspondence theory. So like my computer is on my desk. That's true in a real sense, right? There's a realist notion to this. That's not a value statement, and there's no value statement involved there. I do think we have, these values that unite us and things like that. I'm totally on board with John on that one. However, I just don't think that those are some special truth. They would be real because then truth would just be relative to what culture you occupy. Like for instance, the values that organize and bind Chinese people would be true to Chinese people.
See,
right?
This is where you
just relativistic.
This is where you misunderstand me. Because I think that cultures can be wrong about what those values are. They can have their value assumptions, but I think some of those can be good and some of those can be good and correct, and some of those can be bad and wrong.
Well, this is Thomas's section, so we're going to give Thomas the last word.
No. Thomas. At the beginning, you said bear with me while you read something. I want to hear it. You've left me on the edge of my seat for this.
So Thomas is you're gonna give us our last statement, and then we're gonna have to get a little spicy. And there's only one person in this entire group that can take it away out of this boring, as you like to say it was.
I mean, there's not, political. You expect me to say something like super insightful. Political science and culture war stuff is not my thing. I don't know a lot about any of it, so I'm just learning all this stuff. That's just me here and learning. And
but what do you think about truth? What do you think about truth?
Truth? Well, of course, everything that Tart said is backed up from what I've studied. The deflationary theory of truth is just how he explained it. I take a custom theory of truth. If I have my philosophy hat on, I use correspondence and pragmatist, and then I take understanding of the coherence theory of truth, but I really don't use it. So I'm mainly a correspondence and a pragmatic theory. I mean, I know that some say you can't. I know that some say you can't mix the two, but
no, I'm a plural. Like I said, I'm a pluralist. So I'm right there.
I think John is getting onto something real here, where it's like somebody bring this back down to earth to take it out of the nerdville real quick.
Coherence theory of truth is the idea that the underlying feature of something being true just means that it coheres with a set of beliefs. So like as long as my set of beliefs are coherent, that is that there's not some contradictory notion in them, then that is true. The pragmatic theories of truth, there's a few different ways of characterizing it. I'd probably go with I go with Pierce on it. The the one that I gave earlier, and then correspondence theory is just going to be pointing to something in reality.
That which
And
comports with reality. Yeah.
exactly.
I like those things.
Well,
I'm
that's
all
it.
for it.
I'm cutting it off. I'm cutting off the nerd conversation, and we're gonna get spicy with Masha. So before you speak, I'm gonna play your intro, and then I'll give you a thumbs up. You'll know to start going. Or
Masha
I'll whisper
might
in
have
your
the
ear.
best intro, I have to say.
I think Masha does have the best intro here. We should all
course.
see it right now.
Of course.
I don't know what my intro is. I didn't catch it last time.
Yeah, so I like to kind of recap the previous conversation and segue into mine. I'm going to go with Lacan and say the real is that which resists symbolization absolutely. And one of the things that's very real is biological reality of sex, which is why I'm a female supremacist. I'm not a feminist because I don't believe in equality. I believe females are superior, and that also excludes male-bodied people, including trans women. So that's my sort of like spicy introduction to my take on sort of like the culture war that is raging, and one that I like to learn about, speak to guests about, and comment on fairly often. So I'm an external observer. I didn't grow up in the U.S. I didn't grow up in the West. I was educated, raised in Europe with a background in classical philosophy and sort of the Hellenic and other Stoic thinkers. And so for me, the as an external observer, American culture and the West in general is fascinating for many reasons. One of the things that I would say off the top is I think that the society is now being directed by what is known as a cultural entity, or a culture for short. The term covers both religions and extreme political movements, secular religions, if you like. The culture we are facing is, of course, catastrophism. One crisis after another preoccupies the entirety of public discourse, keeping stress and incoherence high, and funneling us into ever smaller, more discrete, and more exclusionary boutique identities that make true collaboration impossible. So to try and tie that into sort of my way of being in the world, I like I said in my introduction, I don't often tell men what to do, but I try to tell them where they're going wrong. So, American men, I want to tell you that there is a trap being laid for you, and that's the song right now that's quite popular, that's being talked about everywhere, and that is Jason Aldean. Try that in a small town. So let's talk about it. So it was actually, it was,
I literally brought it up earlier today.
yeah. No, I mean the video just came out. Apparently, the song itself came out back in May, but the video is really something. So I want to just like read a couple of lyrics, and then we'll get into it. Sucker punch somebody on a sidewalk, carjack an old lady at a red light, pull a gun on the owner of a liquor store. You think it's cool? Well, act a fool if you like. How do you think my American accent is going?
It's
Cuss out a cop, spit in his face, stomp on the flag and light it up. Yeah, you think you're tough. Well, try that in a small town. See how far you make it down the road. Around here, we take care of our own. You cross that line, it won't take long for you to find out. I don't recommend you don't try that in a small town. Got a gun that my granddad gave me. They say one day they're going to round up. Well, that shit might fly in the city. Good luck, etc. and so on. So my question is, uh, do you take care of your own? Like, do you though? In the small town, do you know your neighbor? Like, are you engaged actively in the life of your family? Do you know what's going on? Is there like an active like community um aspect that you're all, actually actively involved in, or is this just a way to signal that, this culture war isn't welcome there, or like certain people aren't welcome? So would love to open it up to discussion.
First
I
of
mean,
all,
okay.
everyone should like and subscribe because you only get this type of hot takes here. Um,
Yeah, there was like 5 in there. Like,
that's good. We can outline them. We can outline them.
I
I
got
know. I know. Tart started saying something. I don't want to cut you off, so you jump in right now.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I know at least for myself, my family and I, we've not been close in some years. We had a falling out. I came out as I'm gay, and it did not go well. That family unit abandoned me in the truest sense of abandonment. I mean, I was homeless and stuff. So like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I'm your guy. Like I am the definition of pulling myself up by my bootstraps. But I did form my own sort of chosen family, and I have my own small tight knit community. There's just a handful of us, and unfortunately, we've had a number of deaths in that group over the past couple of years that have been really bad. Like I've lost 2 people to cancer in the past 2 years, and another close friend of mine now has cancer, and we're pulling for her too. But hopefully she's gonna live. But we've just lost so many. It's been tragic. But looking out for our own, I mean, this is the kind of group that I took a tumble in my car down a hill one time. The car just went sliding down the hill and got stuck on the train tracks. I couldn't call my family. I picked up the phone and I called David. I called Paul. I called this family group, and they came in force. They were like, they brought the trucks, and they were like going and calling triple A and like trying to get me pulled out of this situation. And I'm just standing there not knowing what to do, and they're all on the phones getting stuff done. And that's the kind of community that I occupy. I don't know about the rest of you guys, or what kind of community you're in, or whether or not you've got your people's backs.
I'm lucky. I'm lucky to be a part of an amazing community. Not only is my family just amazing as a whole, but also my friends. I have a very very good friend group. Me and my best friend since 5th grade, still talk to this day, and I'm turning 30 next week. So I'm very lucky to be in that position where I've had family structures and community my whole life. Um, but when it comes to the song specifically, I think it's important for us to pay attention to rhetoric and the way and understanding rhetoric from. Don't laugh at me, John. Don't laugh.
whistles.
But we can recognize historical trends from rhetoric.
No, I agree.
We can look at like arguments in the past and attitudes and how they're displayed, not just in the specific context of the word, but in like the way which it's positioned socially. And this is positioned socially in a way of saying this stuff is not going to come here. These changes that are happening in other parts of the United States aren't welcome in this area. Try this here. Try and see the barrel of a gun.
Well, but like
Try,
the one reason why it would come there is if there was like social breakdown, if people were unable to eat, right? Like that's what I'm saying. Is like if you're trying to protect your small town's social cohesion, then you're not like shouting try that in a small town is not the way to protect it. It's actually making sure that people are okay, and then they don't need to that like what's going
It's
on with the
reactionary.
opiate crisis, what's going on?
Well, of course it's reactionary. I agree, Masha. I mean, I think that fundamentally none of this happens if our cultures are healthy and our families are healthy. So I agree with you there. I will say that for most of the examples that are actually in the lyrics, most of them are like actually like violent kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
it doesn't really freak me out too much. Where he's like, if you do violence against one of my neighbors, you won't get very far. I have a gun. That doesn't mean necessarily he's going to shoot you. It just means that he's prepared to use force.
I think it's implied, yeah. I mean, I think it's like a veiled Kyle Rittenhouse reference, honestly.
I see that. I think that it can definitely be read that way, and that's fair. I mean, he did say the thing about like burning a flag and stomping on it. If he was connecting that directly to "I'm going to shoot you if you do this,"
Yeah, he did. What is the I mean, and this is what I was saying. Like, we have to slow down and like take a step back from necessarily thinking about this and just, did he say that if you burn the flag, I'm going to shoot you? But the entire song is all of these things aren't welcome here. Come here and try out. while the images in the background are of shooting, of whatever it is. It's very similar to the rhetoric around the Bud Light issue: shoot the cans, shoot the cans. Well, what? Because they made a thing with Dylan Mulvaney, like just some person on Instagram, and they'll tie this into like social disease or whatever it might be. And that's very fun. Oh, social disease. What do you mean social disease? What disease? How does it spread? How does it spread? This is just but this breakdown is just what you're feeling. You haven't pointed to anything. If someone told me, oh, COVID is just a thing and it's spreading, like, point out to the thing. What is the disease? What is the cure? How does this work? And you just appeal to, well, people are sick because of we're not together anymore. It reminds me of arguments from rabbis who said that the Holocaust happened because Jews weren't assimilating, instead of actually dealing with what were the tangible, real effects on the ground, what were the real conditions that made it so this happened, as opposed to talking about something ephemeral like lack of cultural values or lack of cohesion.
Well,
yeah, sure, obviously.
I generally try to refer to things as general categories so I can cover more ground. I mean, we could be specific about the music. I think a couple of things that's part of it is I think fatherlessness is a huge thing. It's the number one predictor of intergenerational poverty. I think a lack of societal expectations regarding the formation of family and regarding the what good conduct looks like, what a good life looks like. I think that when those sorts of things break down, you get kind of more chaos in society. And like, I can give you more specific examples if you want me to look into it.
I just want to say super quick, want to jump in.
Yeah.
I really
phone after you though.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
On something, but you first.
Yeah. I just you brought up something, an excellent point, and it's something I've been thinking about ever since my recent interview with Warren Farrell. I don't know if you guys watched that. He's called, his Wikipedia entry says that he's a father of men's rights activism, but and I had prepared. I'm not going to say like an attacking sort of style, but I was prepared to engage him pretty substantively on some of those, manosphere MRA kind of talking points. But it turned out like that it was like an incredibly wholesome conversation, and his number one concern in his book The Boy Crisis was also fatherlessness. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Great
Go
book.
ahead, John. Yeah,
no, great book, 100%. Everybody should read it. That's one example of societal breakdown, and a lot of it comes from a lack of expectations, because there is a real level of suffering and difficulty that comes with societal expectations, because then people don't always meet the expectations. And it's actually good that you have people that don't meet the expectations. But we've also decided that because this causes some discomfort to some people, we should get rid of the expectations overall. And then what that does is, in my view, makes society a little bit looser and more chaotic, and has those types of breakdowns that I was talking about. But that's not the point, Masha. You just put that idea in my head. Read The Boy Crisis. But Don, I actually agree with you.
But I think
those lyrics are out of line. I actually agree with you. I think it's a stupid way to talk about it. I think he is appealing to a very particular audience. I think he's referencing the BLM riots, because some of them were riots, some of them were actually protests, and but there was violence and there was looting and there was carjackings and stuff like that. And he's very obviously playing on that. And I think it was out of line. That it's the wrong thing to focus on. And I think the thing that really crossed the line was when he talked about an action that was not violent, which is burning the flag. Like, if he had this entire thing, but everything that he was referencing was an act of violence against another person, I would still think it's kind of edgy, but I wouldn't come down on it as hard as the fact is, like, if you step on my flag, I'll shoot you, which is the underlying message. That's really bad. If you carjack an old lady who's my neighbor, I might shoot you. That's something I'm a little bit more...
Well, I think that there's so here's what I think the trap is for men, for American men, especially American men who have that feeling of like that chivalrous masculinity, like that protector masculine archetype, which I actually am a great admirer of. So I wanted to tell you that this is a trap, because this video presents a masculine fantasy of justified violence. So don't fall for it. Don't do that. You don't. I mean, for many reasons, you're not Kyle Rittenhouse, and unless you have a military background, this idea that that you'll only soldiers and former soldiers understand the concept of unlimited liability, i.e., agreeing to perform that duty up to and including the result being the loss of your very life. So don't as a civilian decide that that's your duty somehow. So that's
or
really wanted to
advocate
say that.
for in pop culture to a whole bunch of randos who don't know anything. I agree.
Yes.
I think it's bad
Yes.
culturally.
Yes. Also, the gun crisis is one of those crises, right? Like, there's this libtard, like, messaging out there that, like, oh, the gun violence. We have to regulate. We have to take people's guns away. It's even in the lyrics of the song. Well, if there's a bunch of you vigilantes out there, yes, they will take your guns away. Like,
I mean, but the whole gun point is just backed up by empirical data that where we have a higher concentration of firearms, we see a higher rate of homicide, not gun
no,
violence.
no.
No,
I'm living in
yes,
Canada right now. There's more guns per citizen here than
the United
anywhere in
States.
the world.
That's not
Yes.
true.
Yes, look it up. Look it up.
The data is
Oh,
mixed.
Are we gonna look it up?
Look it up.
I-
Yeah,
I-
higher
you have to break
concentration
in
I've
Right.
read thousands
per
of
capita.
studies.
We need
That-
a segment called Google that shit.
Yeah, we
Somebody
have
Google
to.
that
We
shit.
have that Google shit.
We will institute a segment.
We
called-
will. This is what we're gonna do. We're gonna
It's
hold this
cultural.
up. We're gonna hold this on right now. I'm putting a note. Everyone watching, pay attention. This is how we're gonna do things. We have this agreement right now, and this is an empirical fact, and we haven't set up the infrastructure to research it. So what we're gonna do is hold on this point, and we're gonna directly discuss gun crime, gun prevalence, and how that works, and that whole argument. And we'll discuss guns on next week's show Friday.
Sounds
Okay.
good. It's
Maybe
cultural, by the way, the especially school shooting, and it was, of course, started by a woman. I'm not proud, but it was a teenage girl who did the first school shooting in the U.S.
So we're gonna that's what we're gonna do.
I have another question for Masha,
Yeah.
unless somebody else wants to get in. What do you mean by female supremacy? Like, I just want to know what that actually means to you. Because
Wait, I'm gonna have to give her the big like purple sign as she answers it. So get your question.
Okay, so just to be more specific, like first of all, I love the fact that you're not like a complete equalitarian feminist.
No.
But you also said like I admire like male chivalry in the abstract, which I would not have expected from somebody who calls himself a female supremacist. So,
Big fan. Big
quite
fan.
frankly, what the hell are you talking about? What does female supremacy mean if it doesn't mean like dominatrix stuff?
No, it doesn't. And please don't show up to my show with that bullshit. Like, I'm not. Don't be a man out there looking for like a mommy dom or what. Like, please, no. That's not what I'm trying to do at all. What I mean by female supremacy is something that we're going to go on a journey together and discover. And the reason that it's completely consistent with being a big fan of chivalrous masculinity and like masculine archetypes is that I think that men know that they are there to give service, and I have an enormous amount of respect for a man that is willing to actualize that. Ta-da! So tune into my shows on Wednesday to find out.
I think it goes both ways though, right? In most societies, the ideal relationship for most people is men and women, and yes, men serve women in many chivalrous ways, and then also, as everybody has made a very large ruckus about over the last 50 years, women were also expected to serve men in some ways, and then they would serve each other and they would love each other, and that was the general cultural ideal, generally, not for everybody, but generally. So I mean, why is that a supremacy thing, to just recognize that it goes both ways?
No, I mean, I don't think I think that adults are totally I'm okay with people arranging themselves in whatever trad life, as long as it's voluntaristic, as long as nobody's being coerced. Absolutely, you get to decide. But if, as a man, you want to be a patriarch, then really be a patriarch. Take all of the responsibility for everything that happens in the family. If you're going to have all of the power, you should carry all of the liability. So that's what I'm going to say about that.
That's a perfectly fair bargain.
Yeah.
Why Tate is bad, because he detached the power from the responsibility.
I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
That's one of the reasons men were the only ones who got to vote, is because they're the ones who went to war, right? Like, they're the ones who had to fight, so they're the only ones who got to vote on those kind of things.
No, they're the only ones.
There was a time where that was true. It's not true anymore. But
I actually reject that narrative that men voted because they went and fought. Because it was only land-owning men that really voted, especially for lots of part of history. And a big part of why men even went to war is because they weren't going to send their women, they weren't going to send their property out to die.
Well,
My
control the
culture
system.
innovated democracy. So I'd like to tell you that yes, it's for the landowners because you have to have skin in the game. Like
Yep.
if by your decisions of what you voted for, you face no potential change to your status, there's no reason. You're just voting for your jersey, which is how fucking Americans vote. None of you understand what's actually in your best interest when you're voting. That's why I don't think voting changes anything. Anyway.
that's
Look,
why
when we look at the issues with voting and we look at history, voting has changed things in the 60s and it has changed things in many other times throughout American history. But there are challenges to elections and to voting working.
I
And that
don't think
is
it changed
and that
anything. I
is
think
and that is
it was just
and
the
that is
time.
disin-
It
I
was
think it's
inevitable.
I think it's but that's rejecting the notion that a democracy exists because it consistently puts itself into question. It reinvents itself by generation to generation. And the only process to do that, to liberate us from the tyranny of our ancestors, is to be able to re-ask those questions, relitigate them.
tyranny of our ancestors.
Hey, I'm
You're
just
making
quoting
so many
Madison.
assumptions, yeah.
I'm just quoting Madison here, okay?
Yeah. Are you really? Did he say that? That's interesting.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
he said
He also said things like, for instance, he said that the future should never be beholden to the people of the past. That
Yeah, no,
the
that's
world belongs to the living, not to the dead. He would say things like that all the time.
yeah. I'm partial to Adams. I would say.
Okay, let's go back to the male fantasy of justified violence. So like
Yeah.
the
Well,
no,
there is such thing as justified violence. That does exist, but like people are much too cavalier about it, especially in pop culture.
I think what's justified in the situations that are described in the song is withdrawal. Is like strategic withdrawal. Like I think you need to fuck off if like someone's threatening you or whatever. I think the first and I think every martial artist, every person who's studied, hand to hand combat or any of those skills knows that the preferable outcome is that you just get away without an altercation.
Well, that's true if it's just you. What if one of the examples was like an old lady getting carjacked or something?
So
Then
what? Let them take the car. Who cares? It's just a fucking car. And like where I live in Canada, this farmer shot like to death a young indigenous boy who was just like joyriding across his property and was found to be completely justified in that because whatever. And
legally
I would
maybe.
never trade my soul for that sort of like
Yeah.
spasm of like sadistic like hatred. Like why would you stain yourself with such an action over a material thing?
Right.
As far as
I
I'm
mean,
concerned, yes, have the fucking car. I have insurance. I don't care.
I agree with that. And I think this is like
I
one of
agree
the
as well.
issues that at least a lot of people have with like stand your ground laws.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, it's your property, but it doesn't mean that you could just kill people for it, right? We have a justice system.
Well,
We have
if you're
other
in my
things.
house,
No,
I
I
don't
didn't say.
know. I don't know.
Now we're
Not-
doing some conflation. Hold on, because there's a difference between a guy joyriding across your property and somebody in your house at 3 a.m. and it's dark and you don't know.
Well, a lot of stand your ground
Those
laws
are
is if someone
very
comes onto my property and I give them a warning to leave and they're in the woods or whatever, they're in my shed or whatever it might be, they're not walking into my house. Do I have the right to pull out a gun and shoot them? No, I don't believe so. If someone's out there stealing my car, do I have a right to go ahead and blow their brains out with my AR-15? I don't believe so either.
No.
And I think that while I am a proponent for guns, and I think, yeah, you should be able to own guns, I just want it to be done responsibly and in a way that works.
Oh, this is
Really?
news.
I
This
didn't
is
know.
Oh,
news.
I mean, I say this all the time. I
Don,
shoot
let's go to
guns.
the range. Let's go.
Yeah, let's go. There's
right.
tons of. I gotta show you videos of me in Nashville just full auto shooting things. I have
In
my
Nashville?
brother owns guns.
That's
and I go
the
to
one
the
thing
shooting
I would
range.
come back into the US for is like
He's not a lost cause. We can.
yeah.
we can-
Yeah,
No,
we
you
can-
don't, what you don't understand is I was where you were back when I was a puny little brain and like 18, 19 years old. And then I grew out of it because I stepped out of my own cerebral fluid for a second.
It's amazing.
How
But,
dare you? Wow.
Anyway,
I'm gonna
Oh,
get you.
well,
It's like it reminds me of like people from my past who hear me say something they like about God and they're like, oh, we're gonna get him back. We're gonna get him to believe in God again. It's gonna happen. He's gonna put a yarmulke and come to shul. Like, okay, it's not just gonna happen just because I bring you a little notion of things I like from Judaism or things that I enjoy.
All right, enough of your Jew points. It's fine. Everyone
I
knows
love
you're
my Jew
Jewish.
points.
You're
Dude, my
super
Jew points are the
superior,
best.
the most intelligent
No, it
population
doesn't
on
work
the
that way.
planet. We understand.
Maybe,
Yes,
I mean, listen,
carry on.
according to RFK, we designed the vaccine to kill blacks
that's not what
and
he said.
Caucasians.
That's not what he said.
I mean,
I'm
okay.
not an
Yes,
RFK
it is.
fan.
Yes,
but
Own
that's
it.
not what he said.
Yeah, it is.
Um,
Just own it. Just own what he said.
No, I don't
Just
like
own it.
him like at all. I think he's crazy. He didn't say that they designed it that way. He said that it is.
Yeah, very, very clear brinksmanship going on.
am I the only one that thinks that he looks like a dick and sounds like a vibrator?
I don't know how he's so popular.
Mash, somebody that's gonna be the headliner. That's
Flip it. I don't know how he sounds that way and he's so popular. I am amazed that he's polling at 20%. Like, how do you sound like that? I guess it's just the Kennedy name. Like, I don't know.
It's because he's placating to anti-vaccine. He's placating
but
to
it's
all that,
among
all those conspiracy theories. And they just
20% of
exist.
By the way, Rumble audience, I'm
okay.
not vaccinated. I'm an anti-vaxxer.
Absolutely not.
I am not an anti-vaxxer.
I am. Don't do it.
Basis.
It's RNA. Don't.
I'm on a case by case basis. Anyway, to answer your question, Don, is I think that there's lots of instances. Well, first of all, it depends on where you get your conception of rights from. I like the natural law type of stuff. In terms of defining what's a right and what's not. I think there's many instances where you would be in your rights to shoot somebody for trespassing, where it would be 100% immoral to do so, and I think it would be wrong. But I will say that it gets complicated with the property rights stuff. But I also think that there's instances where people being on your property, simply that, without any more surefire information, there are instances where that can be the scenario, like I said, 3 a.m. in the dark, where it's absolutely justified. And then there's instances where it's not, even though...
In the dark, when you can't see what's going on, it's absolutely justified?
Yes, because he broke into your house while you...
Yes,
I broke into your house.
As a woman, I agree. And I
didn't hear that part. I just
to
heard I can't see what's going on.
women out here.
That's my fault for not being
I'm
specific.
a shush, you fucking guys. My God. Blah, blah, blah. Wank, wank, wank. Anyway, I'm talking to the women out here right now. Get a gun, learn how to use it, be dangerous. And if you're in a state that allows you to concealed carry, do it, because it gives you a different bearing. And there's a lot of studies to confirm that like serial killers and other male abusers of women do identify their prey by the demeanor. They're lazy cowards, and so if you can carry yourself in a way that that would signify that it would be very difficult to catch you, they many times they'll choose not to. They'll choose easier prey. So get really strong. This is why I'm in my squat rack. Get really fucking strong. It's very fun. It's beautiful, and it's super functional. And learn how to use a gun.
Noam Chomsky famously said. Noam Chomsky has famously said. Sorry, John. Somebody said, if you live in a society where you need to urge everyone out to go out and get a gun, you're already fucked up.
Well,
not in those words. It doesn't mean paraphrasing it, but on our interview that we did on the Pangburn show, that's what he said when we talked about guns. Goes,
Americans live in a low trust society. It's true. You have to deal with what is, not what ought to be.
You're already in a position where things are going horribly wrong if that's the case. But I also want to add that responsible gun ownership is super important. You can't just go out, buy a gun, not practice, not deal with it, not clean it, not lock it up when you have children. Uncle Ben told us really great. He was on the floor dying, and Peter Parker is looking over him, and he tells him, with great power comes great responsibility, and we have to take that lesson home.
I mean, I 100% agree with everything that you said, except for the idea that society's already fucked up. I think that human nature is just kind of fucked up, and I think that there's never going to be...
Men's nature is fucked up.
Yeah, I just never think you're going to have a society in which that you're always going to lock your door at night. Just not because the society is necessarily bad, although, the more urgent and the more often you have to use that gun, the more fucked up the society is. The desire to just have one just in case doesn't mean your society's fucked up. It's a recognition that humans suck sometimes just because humans are...
Sure, but that's a different thing of saying humans suck than I urge everyone to go out and get a gun.
I don't know why
carry that. When you're in that position,
women should. Yeah, women should. Yeah.
I mean,
women absolutely should.
I don't think in every society women should. I don't think they necessarily need a gun in every situation. I think there's many other things that women can carry that will do the same without being so dangerous to everybody else. And it depends on where you are and when you are. And the case is that if you live somewhere in crazy crime-ridden areas like Memphis or Jacksonville, Florida, or Detroit, and that's the position that you're in, that really fucking sucks. But we got to really, as a community, recognize that we got to deal with those externalities. So,
well, I actually agree with that. I don't think women always need to be carrying a pistol, but they should always be carrying some form of self-defense, like pepper spray or something like that. I agree.
But I do agree with what Masha was saying about this myth of the virtuous violent man, right? It's like a lot of guys LARPing around there, building their
Yes,
caves
yes.
and waiting for World War V to show up so they can just shoot the zombies. Like they fantasize about it all day, about
Yeah.
wanting to be in that protective role because they
Yeah.
don't have it in their day-to-day life. They feel either emasculated or they feel small. Or
Listen, there are way worse hobbies. Like I'm okay with that. If you're a prepper, we're good. We're fine. We're friends.
Yeah.
Just I'm telling you, it's a trap to like this song, the lyrics. If it's getting your blood up, right? Please reconsider. Take some deep breaths. Just stay at home, like for a little while and figure it out.
Right. I don't think the idea of the virtuous violent man is a myth. I think it's just been overcorrected and overgeneralized. Like in that song, it's massively overgeneralized. I think the fact that men like have this instinct to want to be able to fill that role if necessary is very, very good.
Mhm.
But if you don't have that under control, if you don't have it disciplined, if you don't have a chain to responsibility and to like rational thought in situational awareness, then yeah, it's an overcorrection and it can be pathologized. But like,
excellent point. Situational awareness. Yeah. Excellent point. Situational awareness. Tell our listeners what that means.
It just means that being aware. Well, first of all, situational awareness depends on the context, but the way I meant it, meaning being able to assess a situation and realize when violence is actually necessary to protect yourself or others, or when violence is necessary for nothing other than to protect your ego or something that you like. Those are very different things, and being able to discriminate between those two things is important. Your ego is the enemy.
Enough.
Big Stoic, Masha and I are on the same wavelength like that. You should never be getting violent because of ego. You should only ever be because of violent if there's an actual threat to you or somebody else. I think there's some exceptions to this just because of my personal emotions. There's a couple of things that I can think of where I'd probably punch somebody, but anything above a punch over ego is you being stupid and you shouldn't do it.
But you know what I will do as a psychology major in this room, I do want to tell everyone that, hey, our emotions are a sensory tool, just like any other sensory tool that we have. And they do tell you things about the world. They tell you about your disposition towards it. They might even tell you about things that you're not cognitively recognizing. Just want to put that out there. Well, I love Stoicism. To be like a radical Stoic and reject emotions as a whole, just try to be hyper rational, hyper reasonable, is stripping a part of your humanity.
No.
away.
Come on. Why?
No, I'm not saying that you're saying this.
Like,
I'm not saying that you're saying
ridiculous. No, emotion is
radical.
indulgent. It's beautiful and it has its time and
Yeah,
place. But it is extra. Like it is the cherry on top. It is the ice cream. Like eat the main meal. Stoicism, and then treat yourself to a little, like one scoop of emotion. That's the way to do it.
I take it a different way.
I don't know if I necessarily believe that the main meal is Stoicism. I think so much of life is informed to aspire emotions and to try to be.
No, emotions are terrible. No, that's not a way to be guided through life. Not at all.
They tell you very specific
They
things.
lie. They lie all the time.
Oh no, they don't. They tell you a lot. They tell you a lot of beautiful things about yourself and your disposition to the world, and they don't lie to you. They're telling you real truths.
Something really fun we could do is make everybody take the Myers-Briggs exam and see what everybody's personality type is.
Never Myers-Briggs. Big Five.
Well,
Big Five. Yeah,
I'm just saying, do one of these exams.
Wait, Thomas is nodding. Thomas is nodding about Myers-Briggs and Big Five.
We should take it just to piss off them.
I'm not doing it. Okay.
Correct. No. Myers-Briggs, Ocean, all of those models suck. They're all based on the lexical hypothesis. They have they're we can go over that another time. The lexical hypothesis is basically
this is a show topic.
They looked at a dictionary. They looked at a dictionary. Like, what words fit into what categories? What words are similar, and grouped them together. And what they found is that Ocean in the English language is about 5 or 6. Some argue 7, but other languages can have up to 9 or 10 personality characteristics, or even lower than 4 or 5. So this weird lexical hypothesis that is plagued personality psychology for like the last up until the 70s or 80s, we got to throw away. Myers-Briggs falls into the same category. It's built off of the same archetypes and lexical hypothesis that Jung himself brought up. None of this stuff is used in hospitals. They use the MMPI as a personality inventory to diagnose stuff. The Myers-Briggs, the Ocean model they do not have the veracity to actually function in a contemporary setting. And I know Thomas is a big psychology nerd, so he's putting his thumbs up there.
Well, two
to help me
things
out.
very briefly is one, stoicism is not the destruction of emotion or the ignoring of emotion, in my view. It's just not what it is. If anybody's interested in stoicism, read Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. It's fantastic. It's basically about your emotions not controlling you and you controlling your emotions. Allow yourself to feel them, allow yourself to understand them, but ultimately you act because you decide to act, and you do what you're supposed to do because it's good, not because it feels good in the moment. That's the relation of stoicism to emotion. It just means that emotions don't get to rule you. Your consciousness gets the final word in your action, and your emotions are not the final word. They're just an advisor. That's the way I understand stoicism.
Sure, but what I was talking about is like a radical stoic.
I understand.
We have someone on the Discord that we all love. We all know his name, Navek. If anyone wants to talk to Navek, it'd be one of the most interesting conversations you had in your life. But he comes and says, I'm not ruled by my emotions. I'm not ruled by emotions. I see them, but that's not the reason why I'm acting or that I'm thinking the way I'm thinking. But to me, that's a deluded point of view. How many times, people, we believe that we rationalize our position from a rational perspective, but we have all of these different rationalization, all these different people who believe that they are rational about an issue, but the rationality is just a justification for their already held sentiments. So how does one really distinguish between the 2 points?
Well, this is right. I mean, I kind of like that Humean framework of how it works, is that ultimately emotion undergirds everything. And that's true, but
it doesn't have to be one or the other, John. It's not one
paradoxical dispositionalism.
Remember, that's what it was.
That's what it was. You just made me remember it.
Paradoxical dispositionalism.
I guess my point is that while deep emotions can inform your action, all I'm saying is that the passions that are in the moment that you're feeling that are threatening to overwhelm you should not be the thing that dictates your actions. If you have underlying feelings or convictions and that informs your decision-making matrix, that's fine. But just the in the moment flood of emotion should not be what dictates your action.
It can remember that you are not your emotions.
Not alone. It shouldn't override everything else.
Right. Exactly. Your emotions aren't you, just like your reasoning isn't you. These are things that you perceive, that you experience.
And then the second thing was the question I actually had for you, Thomas, as well as Don, which is, I know nothing about psychology and I know nothing about the Big Five, but I don't know, man. I've had people take the test and it says some people are more open and some people aren't. And it says some people are more neurotic and some people aren't. And it's real, because the people who got higher neurotic scores are people who are definitely more sensitive to negative emotion. I know personally. So when you say it's not real or it's bunk, what do you mean? Does neuroticism not exist? Is it not measurable? Or what do you really mean by that? Because I've seen some accurate results in at least those 2 axes. I'm just curious what you guys think about that idea.
Take it away, Thomas.
Don, you laid into it earlier, and I'm curious.
You sure? No, Thomas, go for it. What do you think? You want me to go take it? You want to take the question? I'll take it.
Bro, educate me. I don't know anything. That's what I'm asking.
Basically, what I'm really saying, I'm not saying there's no you're not gonna get some sort of result out of it. But you're gonna be able to approximate. If I do an inventory of anything, any set of traits, and keep them consistent, I'm gonna get some variations. I'm gonna get groups and clusters. But when I mean this doesn't have veracity, what I'm saying is that when we try to go ahead and apply this in any way, if you take the test now in this setting, and then you take the test when you're in a classroom setting, or you take the test in a few weeks after you've surfed on the beach, you're going to get wildly different results. Mm-hmm. And that shows a lack of internal validity in the metric. I mean, are you actually measuring what you're attempting to measure? Because if your personality is supposed to be this idea that it's stable and I can measure and then put you in a workplace, understand who you are, why is it that depending on the context of where you take the test that your results are changing?
Well,
and on top of that is how do we use this test? Can I does it line up and find me diagnoses of people who are suffering from ailments? Can I look at people who are suffering with similar problems and get results? Well, when I do the test, I get about an alpha score, a correlational coefficient of 0.3. It's not significant enough to really make sense of the data, and that's what I mean by it's spunk. It doesn't. Yeah, go ahead, Thomas.
Yeah, may I jump in real quick? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hijack you there.
Please, I want to be educated.
Sure. I was just looking around. I found my notes on this for a show I was going to do, and So I looked up and I went online and I talked to Don about this too. But when you have the Big Five, the ocean model, there's a couple of things that I found that were problematic. There's no real theoretical fundamental foundation. It's derived from like factor analysis of personality questionnaires. It's a very loose psychometric. Um, it's not really useful in psychiatry because neuroticism is too broad and doesn't inform like mental illness very well or inform diagnoses very well. And it doesn't tell us anything about treatment, like in any shape, form, or fashion. So it's not going to tell you anything about mental illness. And the bulk of variance is weighted on neuroticism, 30 to 50%, but it only comprises 1/5 of the subscales of the set. So it's also arbitrary. The number of factors could be anywhere from 2 to 16. The choice of 5 and obsessive repetition by researchers, uh, that quote unquote consensus has developed around the number 5 is not supported by any evidence.
Sure.
One researcher shared that 5 was chosen because 4 did not seem like enough and 6 seemed like too many. So
Nice.
one last thing, and then it says the factors are not unrelated to each other. Neuroticism strongly and negatively correlates with conscientiousness.
Yeah.
So there's a problem with that.
Okay. So if I'm understanding correctly, I mean, Don, so that seems more fundamentally damning. Don, what I was thinking to myself is that if the answers vary based on like where you are and like what you've been doing, the obvious solution to me feels like you just take it multiple times in multiple areas and you just average. But but let's say that the test is just bad. It would still be fair to say that while these tests are bad, there is such a thing as being more neurotic or less neurotic, or being more open or less open, or being more conscientious or being less conscientious as like part of your character. Like, are those like, let's say that the test is bad. Does that mean that those statements are like not fair to say? Or is it just a measuring problem, even if the underlying aspects of sensitivity to emotion and like organization really do
Well,
exist?
if
Like I
I
have
am
experience with human beings, and like I know some people are more sensitive to negative emotion than I know that some people aren't, and I know some people are more
sure, but
industrious.
sure, like, but to say that this person is more neurotic, sure, you can say that. I can say this person is more spiritual, and have a coherent like concept of it. Be like, oh, this person displays this traits and this traits, and I call this spirituality. Or I can say this person is more, I don't know, their chakra is more aligned and therefore they're more open. And they'd be like, that's what that means. But that doesn't actually measure what we're trying to get at, which is a person's personality. Because
Have
it
any of
seems,
you
Is
ever
it even
been?
possible
I'm
to
sorry
measure?
to interrupt. Go ahead.
Is it
no, I
even
mean,
is it
I
even
mean,
possible to measure that? Like, is
I
that even
mean,
like
there's a
what?
really good thing called MMPI, the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory Assessment, and that is generally the best one. But it has like 50 different variables. It uses AI and computers to like use graphic interfaces to map out these different like shapes and associate those shapes with other shapes. It's a whole deal, but it's definitely not Ocean, and it's definitely not Myers Briggs.
What were you gonna say?
Okay, my question. So have any of you ever been subjected to those like psychometric tests as a part of like the candidate selection process when applying for work?
No.
Oh, okay. So it,
Yes, I have. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. What did you think of it, Tart?
I was not a fan. I can understand where their concerns were coming from. They're hoping that these sort of things are going to, give you a good idea of the candidate and what they're like. But not really. Like a candidate can one you could fake those things very easily. It's not that hard to see like what they're looking for. Some of them even like for instance, you might have a candidate also that has like if it's actually like a test because some companies I've tried to that I've applied for had specific kinds of tests
Mhm.
and there's been times where I just misunderstood what the hell the test was even trying to test me for and it
Yeah,
didn't make any sense, and I didn't get the job, and I was like, "But why?" And they were
yeah.
like, "Well, you scored really poorly on this." It's like, "What was that even supposed to be testing for?"
That's real.
And it didn't make any sense, and it was like and so I don't think it's a good metric to put people,
Yeah,
for jobs to do this. I
yeah.
think it's a very bad idea.
Here's something I'll tell you. So, the first time I did that, I, went there in good faith. I wasn't trying to like game it. I wasn't trying to like look into it beforehand. I showed up and like I took the test, and I scored really high for deception because English is my third language, and I speak it sort of pedantically. I want to be really precise in the way I'm using the English language, and so sometimes they would ask what is meant to have been the same question in 3 different ways, but to someone for whom English is not their native language, I didn't see that as the same question. So I answered differently each of those 3 times. So if you're an employer out there, maybe like rethink some of that, because you're kind of weeding out someone who's really precise in some cases.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Political tests are
We're
too. Online political tests suck. They're
Yeah.
so somebody asked me to take one the other day, and like I was ripping my hair out because the questions are just like so imprecise. I'm like, what do you mean by should? I was like yelling that.
What do you mean by is? What do you mean by the? What do you mean by lobster?
It's not the same thing.
What do you mean by lobster?
Well, we're at 2 hours, guys.
Yeah,
like,
we're
let's
at 2
talk about it.
hours. Everyone, I'm gonna put the thing in. If you're watching, copy this link, put it on your computer.
We need to do a giveaway.
Join. Yeah, we're doing giveaways too for amazing chats. We gotta vote on that. We also haven't done the last section that we gotta get to. So let's get to that section. Talk about that. It's not as exciting. I think Masha brought the heat. We ended up going off the rails there for a little bit, and that enabled some good conversation. But please go to the Discord, call in. There's a live room there with one of our other hosts, Jack. It's called either Live Hangout or Live, and go try to call in. Disagree with us. It's obviously good fun and games here. I'm going to leave that on for another couple of minutes. But what we're going to now, we're going to close. Huh?
Sorry, last chance for good comments that will allow you to win prizes.
Exactly.
So, hey.
All of those Rumble comments, all of them, will contact you. They're not showing up in the program's chats we're using, so we're going to have to figure that out for next time. But we'll contact you with your best comments. So please go ahead. I wish I could be seeing them. Say something smart, engaging, helpful, not just like, I don't know, say like idiots over and over with caps, which I do love those comments. They make me, a lot of effort went into all those idiots. Control V, Control V, Control V, Control V. Anyhow.
Although if you do play to our egos, that'll probably help your chances.
Definitely. I've secured 10 votes for just myself, so.
Yeah, of course.
Be nice to me.
Well, I'm going to take us into our last topic that I'm going to bring in. And then we're going to try to get these questions and callers in. I'm trying to get Nivik on. Guys, I think it'd be great to give Nivik a little stage.
Can we not do that like first time? Like, can we just...
we have to bring Nivik in. Come on. If anyone's going to call in...
I feel like there's got to be... I'm with John. We got to have some build up to Nivik.
Nivik
is an event. Nivik is an event.
Perry,
it's Nivik. I mean, you guys talk to him.
I'm mostly kidding. If he's actually waiting, we shouldn't.
Oh yeah,
I don't see him waiting. I don't see him waiting in the callers.
If he's waiting, I'm not gonna
turn
him away.
That's a big move if we say no.
No, I don't see him actually waiting. Okay. So let's do.
I'm gonna message him right now.
No, Masha, no, please.
No, I'll do it.
She is doing it. Look at her. She's typing something. Oh God.
It's happening. Well, while Masha tries to get Nivik here after everyone nicks Nivik.
Okay. Last segment.
We're gonna go into the last segment and. Yeah, well, it's going to be my little segment.
Is it the main event?
What? That's not supposed to happen. Okay, so it's the main segment now. And what I really want to talk about is Rumble itself. We got onto this platform not because we decided to go on Rumble because we felt like we needed to as a community. We ended up on Rumble because we were on an app called Callin. And Callin really enabled us to have these type of conversations and really engage the viewers. The way Callin worked was you do a show there and anyone who's watching us press a button and come right in and call into the show. And we had combined over 500 shows. We've had phenomenal. We've had Lawrence Krauss on. We've had Noam Chomsky. I've spoken to professors from all over Europe and all over the States who deal in psychology and philosophy. I even had a professor who's the #1 cited neuroscientist in the country, Lisa Feldman Barrett, on the show with me. And that's just really exciting. So how are we here on Rumble? Well, Rumble bought Callin. And just like any big company buying another big company, we are one of the externalities. Now we have to move and make this shift. But I think a lot of people who are on this platform know about the controversy around the platform itself. Rumble has been accused of spreading misinformation, especially during COVID, allowing bigots and racists on their platforms. And for me, this is something that I contend with. Am I contributing to an organization that is allowing these types of voices to get stronger, allowing these types of attitudes to proliferate, and cause harm to society without any real social feedback? And this is why I call my show Dissent. And what I aim to do is in a space that entirely is created out of dissent for the current status quo, I'm going to come in and fight against that within the space itself. But what is everyone's opinions? Has Rumble been a net positive, a net negative? Have they allowed specific voices to be heard that are problematic from a remember, with great power comes great responsibility. Is Joe Rogan in that same camp? Was he
Oh my
irresponsible with the way he
god.
does?
Hold on.
Ah.
Before we dive into material real quick, I'm seeing people in the comments. Guys, if you want a chance at the gift cards, you have to comment on Rumble. That's our policy, correct?
Yes.
Just so people know that you might be a great chatter on YouTube. People have been paying me very nice compliments, but it doesn't matter if you're commenting on YouTube. You have to comment on Rumble to be eligible. There seemed to be some confusion about that in the YouTube comments. I want to make sure everybody knows that. Okay, I'll shut up now.
So just to weigh in on the question there, I think I kind of take a like a JS Mill kind of approach. Like I can't help but think while I agree, racists, these sort of people, they're definitely a problem, and they're a bigger festering problem in our culture than I think most people are willing to point out. But Mill would say, we bring those sort of conversations into public light, and in the light of the public, they'll shrivel. It's when you let them hide away under the desk. It's when you let them hide in little corners that they fester and grow like mold. And so it's only the right thing to do is to bring it into the public discourse and let it die on the stage in front of everybody so that everyone knows this is in fact a bad idea. That's part of what sort of is the mission with Pangburn, right? The idea is that we're gonna let these conversations happen and let them die on the public stage for the bad idea that they are.
This is
But that's
100.
like the central agreement between Pangburn and Rumble is free speech, right?
This is 100% right.
And good faith
Yeah.
conversation. So yeah, of course, Rumble is a perfect platform for us.
Yeah,
And
this
for
is
me specifically, because Rumble is meant to be everything that YouTube is not. Like YouTube constantly demonetizing people that are like talking about true, real, material fucking reality. Like, of course, I'm glad that we're on Rumble. I'm glad that I can finally say exactly what I mean without, having that hung over me of like, oh, your channel might get wiped out or demonetized or whatever. Yes, I think Rumble is great, and YouTube can suck a big dick.
Okay, so I agree with Tart. I also agree with Masha. I think that my show is called The War of Ideas for a reason. Despite a lot of recent history, I still keep the faith that the best solution to bad ideas are good ideas. I think that our conversations are overly controlled. I think that a lot of actually the damage spread by misinformation would not have been so bad if the misinformation wasn't suppressed. Because when you hide things, it makes people conspiratorial, it makes them interested, and it makes them feel like it's being hidden for a reason. In most cases, there is such a thing as like false equivalence, but in most cases, allowing the ideas to both exist and having just an argument about it, I think is better just on a moral level and on a practical level. And then the other thing that Masha pointed out, so moving from Tart's point to Masha's point, is like, I don't really trust the people at YouTube to decide what's harmful and what's not. Like, who the hell are they? I don't trust them at all to make those decisions.
Right, like how many libtards made their careers with being like disinformation czars, basically censors. Like, listen, I come from a part of Europe that tried that under various socialist and pseudo-communist governments. Like, you guys don't understand what's happening to you. It's a very bad idea to allow people to advance in the party, like become party apparatchiks on the basis of deciding what is misinformation, disinformation, and censoring voices of opposition.
Correct, 100% correct. And also, I'd just like to say, it's not like Rumble has no limits. You cannot threaten or advocate for violence. I think somebody just got hit for that. Some right winger. I don't know. Somebody got hit for that recently. So there are limits. And also recent history has indicated that sometimes they'll just lie about.
Okay, what even is a right winger? Like, you are all Americans, right? Yeah. Like, explain to me how we're not living in a post ideological like climate in the U.S. Like, what even is right and left wing? Like, where would you put the Democrats and
Well,
and
before
all of that?
before we move to that point, my audio just cut out for a little bit, so I couldn't hear anyone. The cat I was telling everyone about decided to jump on my keyboard and fuck everything up. Hi, cat. But
That's why dogs are better.
Dogs
That'll
are.
be
it's
me
not
with-
my cat, just babysitting. But he's cute. He's cute. He's the best, little Nino. But
they can control your brain. You know? Did you know that?
can they? I did not know that. I don't think they can.
Look this up. Okay, there's
Parasites in their poop. No,
no,
let's not talk about.
Let's not talk about cats. What
cats
we
have
need.
mind control. Look it
No
up.
poop parasite conversation. Back to
Yeah.
our talk.
So real. Okay.
But what I want to make sure that we're saying is, I'm not saying censor, right? There's a fine
But
line.
just a little bit, just the tip.
No.
Just a
There's
little bit.
not just a tip. It's not the whole God can't see. That's not what I'm talking about.
Just
What I'm talking about is the ability for us as organizations, as groups, as people who are within a free association holding each other accountable, not in a censorship way, but like one of the best things Twitter did is community comments, for example.
True.
I like it. It's not bad. Is that censorship?
No.
But as also, we're also at an impasse here, because what we're seeing, and this is why I wanted to bring that up, this is exactly the anti-political point of view, that instead of having us as a community dictate guidelines, but what is and shouldn't be allowed to say, or saying, hey, you might be $1 billion corporation, and instead of putting the hands of you, we can have some ideas of how you ought to run public communication, public discourse. Now that you are a part of this market, can you really just let it all just out wild, like no laws whatsoever, no rules at all? I'm not telling you what you can or cannot say, but I'm telling you about how we go about this process is what we should really pay attention to. Because as Tart says, we do want to make sure that these voices have counters to them. But the way social media operates, it creates enclaves. It creates groups that don't have this information come from the
You're
outside.
all in echo chambers. Like, you're talking about other people's echo chambers. You're in a fucking echo chamber.
Everyone.
You're talking to me
But
about
wait,
gender out of a complete echo chamber that's like your ideas have never been tested against reality or against
That's not true.
anyone from outside of your like specific little cultural enclave. Like, whatever.
I mean, why did you bring gender into this?
Because that's my particular and specific and like deep schism with you. I like otherwise really respect you as an intellectual, but that's the one thing where
Well,
I'm
that's
like,
the one I
how
disagree
can
with
you?
you.
Yeah,
That's the one I
yeah.
find very disagreeing with, because I'm
Don,
not basing
Don,
my
Don and
notions
I
of-
had an abortive attempt at a debate about this. Maybe we'll try to get on Rumble.
Don and I actually had it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad two males are talking about gender. That's fucking.
I mean,
great.
I would have loved to talk
Yeah,
with you about
absolutely.
gender, but things got a little bit too heated and uncomfortable.
Well, you wouldn't meet my stipulations for
I didn't
judges
try.
and
It
so
had
forth.
nothing to do with me. It was the organizer.
Okay,
Okay, right?
Okay.
But we were still gonna hold it. The whole. We don't have to rehash
Back-
drama.
we
yeah,
don't.
Back on the Rumble.
We don't.
But the point is to say that I'm existing in a specific echo chamber. I listen to your viewpoint. I listen to a lot of viewpoints. I really try really hard to stay out of echo chambers, which is why I read dissenting viewpoints. Now you might laugh at that, but I'm not. It's not a joke. Do I not engage in conversation with people who I disagree with on a daily basis?
I find that you engage insofar as like you're truffle pigging for a specific like thing that you can then like take apart that person's argument. Like, you're not actually listening in the like there's at no moment do I get the sense that you're open to actually changing your mind or like changing your perspective.
That's a big levy against me, because we had a conversation the other day where you don't think I was just asking you questions about a specific topic without trying to dissect it. I'll bring up an objection when I disagree with something, but to say that I consistently look for an objection, that's not true at all. That seems like you don't even know me at this point.
Can we call a versus battle? Don versus Masha here? We
Oh,
haven't done
God.
that yet.
No.
You
Okay, I
versus.
guess
Y'all
it's
gotta
happening.
resolve it. Y'all gotta
I
resolve
guess
it.
it's happening.
Stamina for like this
Perry,
is the longest
set it
time I've
up.
ever sat
No,
in one
do it.
place.
Set it
Like,
up.
do it.
Set it up, Perry.
Free me.
Versus
Set it
battle. Don.
versus battle is basically our small attempt is when two people get into a disagreement, all the other noise goes out, and it's just us. And we're going to talk about it for a max of like 5-10 minutes, and then we'll just move back to the group. So I guess, Masha, our disagreement here is that specifically about that I'm not trying to be open to hear other people's opinions, and I'm just looking for truffling my way to dissect them, which seems to me very counter to my experience with most people that I speak with.
Well, is this like sort of a almost like autistic, like pedantic philosophy nerd type of engagement with ideas? Like you are not like you're not present in the conversation. We're not like creating meaning together. It's not a dialogical process. It's kind of like you placing yourself above and then, just like scanning the territory of the other person's argument for like places to drop bombs on it, right? Whether in that immediate conversation or later on, I'll
Oh.
give you that. But
But
certainly,
can't I have disagreements with individuals? Isn't that a part of the dialectic to bring up your disagreements and talk about them in a meaningful way while trying to understand and steelman each other's position? I think that I make sure to steelman and accurately represent everybody's opinion argument that I talked about. When they say that's not what I'm saying, I go forward and I tackle that engagement. And I wonder why you say that. I wonder why you paint me, instead of talking about what I'm speaking about, you started attacking my
right,
character about
not
what
your
my
character,
intentions are.
your
My
process, your
my
way of
process, my
engaging.
intention.
Yeah,
My
not you.
intentions behind the
I know
process.
your character is good, or I wouldn't be speaking to you at all, or I
Okay.
wouldn't be engaging with you at all, especially on something like gender, because you have no fucking skin in the game on gender. Like, there's no way that I would be indulging a conversation with a male about what a woman is if I didn't have some respect for you as a person.
Well,
So,
I don't think, but we've never had this conversation because I don't think I necessarily disagree with your notion or your definition of woman. What
mm.
I'm saying that there are usages for the words, and if we just account
Again,
for the
this
usages,
is like that whole like philosophy
why?
nerd kind of like we're playing with abstractions at this point when that particular topic has real repercussions for material reality for real women, right? Like I'm not that interested to play like these fairly silly games, just like okay, it's as a cognitive exercise. uh
But it's not a
Boring.
cognitive exercise because it has real ramifications, and the ramifications that I'm trying to breach are not necessarily the ones of, oh, what do we mean by woman, but rather how do we think about this issue so we're able to communicate with one another about it. Because I'm
There's
not
no
saying
there's
that
no reason, like, there's no reason for
there's no reason
engagement
to
on the internet.
breach.
Everyone knows what a woman is. Why are we pretending? What we could engage on is
Well, does everybody
why
know?
this society needs to pretend like we don't know what a woman is. That's
But
something we could talk
I would
about.
I would say that in society, people are disagreeing on this. This topic is on the news
What
every night. We're
yeah,
having bills and legislation specifically about this. So to say that everybody knows and everybody is pretending is just not recognizing the reality that no, not everybody knows and everybody's pretending. People are in actual disagreement over it. And I'm trying to figure out where the disagreement is and why the disagreement is, and try to lay out the terms so everybody can understand and actually have a communicative process. Because I
are you
feel like
saying
a
that
lot.
you don't have an a priori position on this? That
No,
would
I
be a
don't actually.
lie
I am about what gender is specifically and what the
about
words
what a
mean.
woman is.
I mean,
Yeah.
my personal position on womanhood and what woman is informed by the things I know and the things I understand. But when I talk about what a woman is and what gender and what I wanted to talk about in our debate was this overarching concept that we can think of woman as a social construct and we can talk about it. But
Listen, what you have at stake in that conversation is your group belonging to a certain like wanky inner circle of like whatever, like globo homo queers on the fucking server, which I love you all. Like, hello, I'm also not straight, but what's at stake for me is like much bigger and deeper than that. So yeah, I mean,
well, why would you
I would
say?
think
But
twice.
I think that it's specifically because of your stake that you're unable to recognize what I'm talking about. It's because you have so much stake in the game, you have blinded yourself to the ability to step out of your own body, out of your own mind, and
Why
look
would
at
I?
reality as it expresses itself. Because there's other people than just you.
Is there?
I think so.
No, of course there is, but like again, I'm going to return to some things are like irreducible, are do not lend themselves to being represented as symbols. And like I said in my conversation, the fact of female biology and the its connection, like so a woman is an adult human female who survived girlhood. Those are all potentially socially constructed, but at no moment in that flow from gestation through childhood into adulthood is there any room for a male-bodied individual to try to abstract any of that or put any of that on like a costume. It's just not like just no. Like women are saying no. Females are saying no.
I understand what you're
I,
saying.
as a female supremacist, I'm saying no.
I hear that, but what I recognize is that there's many people who are saying yes, and there are many, and there's many
Too bad.
and there are many arguments and many
Too
and much
bad. How many people does that actually
and much
affect? Well, I
and
know
much
everybody now
and
trans.
much and much
Great.
and much effort exists in the scientific world, specifically when we talk about correspondence, when we talk about psychology. It's these more modern notions of gender that are giving us conceptual and pragmatic utility, going back to what I'm talking about when I talk about truth. But I've said, and I will consistently say, we use whatever word, if we mean by women a biological female and we mean by men a biological male, no trans woman is a female, and that's fine. We can talk about things that way.
They
No
can't have the
cis
word
woman.
woman. They can't have the word woman. I
I
won't be called
understand what you.
cis. I won't be a subcategory of my own sex class. No fucking thank you.
But what
Absolutely
if
don't
instead of
cis at
woman,
me. How
what if
dare
what?
you?
I'm not saying you're. I'm not giving you that. I'm talking about the way the current
That's not a thing.
literature speaks about it.
There's
You don't
just
have to agree
women
with it.
and pretend women and
Well,
not real
according to the
women.
Yale School of Medicine,
Chicks
they
with dick.
have these They have these categories,
I
and they
don't care.
use
Listen,
them.
I don't care if a male wants to perform femininity. Femininity is actively detrimental to women. You all can have it. You invented it. You all can shove every piece of like, bleach infused
But why are you
like
saying you?
Tampax
I'm not a
product
part of the
into your
group.
rot
I'm not.
pocket
You're the
and
one who's doing the group
call
thing,
yourself a
Masha.
doll or whatever you want to. But it still doesn't make you a woman. You'll never be a woman.
But you're the one who's doing the group thing. You're consistent about you people, your group. You're seeing it this way
Trans-identified
because
males.
when you talk about that community and whatever they deal with and the literature that supports their validity in a sense, whether you don't like it or not,
Who
but
cares? Who
there is
cares?
evidentiary
Who
support.
cares?
They do.
Who cares?
Their families
You
do.
should look
People
into
affected
like
by this.
why that's the case. Like what kind of like endocrine disruption has happened to make
We can look
people
into
this.
all of that.
Also, like that presupposes some like essential female soul that's different from the
It
male
doesn't.
soul.
It
Yes,
doesn't.
it
I don't.
does.
I don't
If
presuppose
there's
that.
like if the argument is I'm a woman, if I'm a male-bodied human and I say I'm a woman on the basis of like my inner feeling of womanhood, what the fuck is that? Anyway, I'm done.
I
I'm
don't
done.
have. Do I,
We're done. We're done with
you're
one v
done.
one.
You're done with
Yeah,
this.
I'm
Okay.
done. We'll have a fulsome
Well,
debate.
I think I'll have the last word then if you're done. I would say that I don't think of gender as essentialized. I don't think of gender as like an essential category. And I think that gender is performative and it's entirely different than what you're talking about. And while sex and gender are distinct, you are correct. Sex-wise, no trans man is like you or shares what you and other women who are biologically female have in common. And I definitely agree that.
So that was fun.
That's
My
the
new
verses.
favorite segment. I love the
That was
verses. These are
fantastic.
fun.
Hey, 1v1.
Y'all are testing
One
me.
v one, yeah. Like I mean, hey, look, you got heated, and I was like, you know what? We haven't called a 1v1 yet, and the whole like they gotta introduce the concepts we're
Start with
using
the
here.
clutch,
Not only have I been sitting for 2 hours, I missed my anabolic window after working out. Like it's all just like you're all just on my shit list now.
You did say that you like think femininity is detrimental to women. We're gonna have to unpack that at a later show because I disagree.
Oh, because John
I
likes
mean,
his feminine, docile women, right, John?
no,
Not
not
what femininity means.
not femininity that's in line with an expression of womanhood. I mean, like the commodified femininity of like late
I would
stage
agree.
capitalism.
I
Okay.
agree.
Right?
I agree.
I
I
agree
agree.
with that as well.
We agree there.
As well.
I
You
agree.
know,
So,
Kim Kardashian femininity,
No,
like
yeah. No,
but
that's
Brazilian
a
butt lift,
Yeah.
Ozempic, like all of this bullshit. That's hostile to female
Yeah,
beings.
I mean, I think that's
I'm saying that male-bodied people can have that. can wear all the wigs, can shove all of the bleach soaked Tampax into their rot pockets, can wear all the high heels, can put all the makeup that has like titanium dioxide and could potentially blind you, all the cancer causing fucking bullshit, like lotions and stupid goos. Men can have that. You can fucking have that. You can perform femininity all you want, trans women out there. I have more respect for those of you who understand that you're male and who call yourselves dolls, because that's what you are. You're plastic. You're fake women. Thank you.
Okay. So what I was going to say is that I agree that the femininity you see with like Kim Kardashian and other late stage capitalism stuff is a pathologized version, very similar to how like Andrew Tate and that country guy were performing a pathologized,
Yes.
exaggerated version of what masculinity is. I agree.
Bravo.
Like, there's a
Yeah.
kernel there, but you've pathologized it and you've exaggerated it to be something grotesque. About Rumble though, back to the actual segment. I had,
But I feel like never mind. I don't have to respond to everything. Go ahead about Rumble.
I know it's difficult. I'm sure I feel bad for your position. I know you guys want to do this forever. About Rumble though, I do feel like Rumble has rules, right? Like Rumble does have rules. They're just broader rules. It's not like they're not thinking about like what our responsibilities are, what's a good way to run our server. They've decided that this is the policy they want. Like there's no such thing as like neutrality or policy apathy. They've just decided if you're not threatening violence, we want your voice to be heard. We believe in free speech principles here. Like I don't know why that's like bad or bad in any more fundamental sense than like a political disagreement. I mean, Tart, you haven't got I feel like you'd have an opinion on this. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm empathetic to the sort of moral concerns that we're gonna have around the topic, right? Like, I can't help but mention, hey, look, there is a lot of harm that can come from being overly accepting of ideas, right? Now, the idea though is that if you're platforming these individuals and providing them a way in which to voice it and give it out to people, that can be ethically concerning, but in my view, I'm going to stick with what I said before. I still go with J.S. Mill. I think he's right that the best way to kill a bad idea is to put it in the public light.
I agree.
Um, the only thing that can be troubling with the instance of like Rumble is that it's providing them a microphone which to speak out to people, but they don't necessarily always get a response. So it's on us. We have to do the response, which is part of why Don and I are here. Why Thomas is here is I want to give responses to those things. I want to pull them out of their echo chamber, and I want to I want to show them the light.
Well, this is why community notes is good and why it's different, right? Because censorship is one thing. Also, killing people's reach with like secret blacklists, which is something Twitter used to do, is also bad. Because guess what? That's top-down dictates of what's good and what's bad. But if the algorithm is basically bottom up and it's just like what's popular is popular and will get promoted and what's not popular is not, and if the fact checking is bottom up agreement, which does not limit the view as far as I'm aware, but just has like an extra bit of context on the bottom, which by the way is only publicly available after people of wildly different persuasions all like basically vote and agree. Like the difference fundamentally is it's bottom up and it's not reach limiting most of the time. And whenever it's top down or whenever it's the few dictating what the many get to, when it's ever the few dictating to the many, it's not reach limiting almost at all. And the only exceptions are actually illegal things like promoting violence. And
But this is why I always think that we need to really take into consideration the rules of how we do public discourse. That's what made democracy work. That's how we get it to even function.
What do you mean by we? I agree.
We, all of us, everyone together.
Right. And I agree. If we promote
we have to figure out a way by which we can make these decisions of how we go about and make sure that, like Tart said, the microphone is being yelled at, right? It amplifies the voice, but it doesn't amplify the controversy back to the person. It enables these echo chambers. So we as a society, as a collective, need to figure out how we consistently re-ask the question of who we are and how we do things. And this is, for me, democracy, political bodies. This is what government is supposed to work like. Unfortunately, our government has also disenfranchised us in many ways, which is why, for me, my biggest political talking point is enfranchisement, making sure that people's vote actually matters, ending gerrymandering, ending all of these institutions that have made it that voting doesn't do anything at all.
Well, if you want to keep it to Rumble, if you really believe that, then you should be agreeing with me here, because Rumble doesn't give everybody a microphone implies that you have volume over other people. That's explicitly not
Well,
what
Rumble has signed exclusivity deal with people like Steven Crowder, which I find
Well,
absolutely
but they
disgusting
don't
and
promote. They
reprehensible.
don't, as far as I'm aware, that they don't promote his content over other people's just because of his viewpoint. As far as I'm aware.
No, they promote his content over the fact that he can give them viewers and make him money.
Right, but again, see how that's not tied to ideology. It's tied.
No,
to
but we're talking about the externalities.
By the way,
We're talking
popularity is kind of like everybody getting a vote and everybody deciding what they like. Like, this
but
is
we don't have.
this
But
is
we don't have to think of a pure democracy. Well, we can understand that pure democracies, like the ones that Socrates is talking about, are problematic, while recognizing that.
Yeah, the democracy has its problems. Aristotle.
But we also have to understand that we have to think of what the other options are, right? People say democracy is what is it, the worst bad system, but the best one we got. People say this all the time.
The worst political system ever devised, except for all the other ones.
Fantastic. Yeah, there we go.
Yes. So it really depends on what you mean by we, because I feel like this is like a nice. I don't know. This is probably gonna be the last thing I say.
It is. It's gonna be the last thing. We're really close to wrapping up. So everybody got to get our last word in before it's time to
last word here. I'll go first on the last word. I'll take the bullet of not getting to respond to anything because I can't shut up apparently. If you mean we, like us as a cultural force, like Pangburn and other people, leading by example and encouraging people to dictate public discourse in a particular way, of voting with their dollar, of voting with their views, of voting with their words about what they think it should be and what they think it shouldn't on this platform, I 100% agree. But if you're telling me that we, in terms of the people who run the company, arbitrarily get to decide how much people get to see people based on, I don't know, not liking your ideas or deciding that it's offensive, then I'm totally against that. So when you say we, you got to be specific. Because I agree that we should promote these ideas. I don't think that they should be forced down. Now, private businesses can do what they want, but I don't think they should. The only limit is when it comes to actual violence and when it comes to what's actually illegal. But other than that, don't use force. Good ideas don't need force when it comes to social media platforms. Good ideas will just win because they're good. And we should promote that in our action and lead by example rather than try to cram it down on people, because that's ultimately counterproductive and it's also wrong. So that's
I actually want to follow up.
Oh, you want to follow up, Tart? Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up with that since John has put his baton down now and he's not able to respond. Now I'm coming in for I got to come after John for 5 seconds. Sorry, my friend. But it's funny because we were at the beginning of this conversation, we talked a little bit about how, you had been talking with Breed Love about moving away from the sort of government situations. And here we are, we're sort of complaining about things that YouTube does, but YouTube is not a government institution. It's a company. And you're now having the similar concerns, the kind of concerns that I had pointed out in that part of the discussion about things like YouTube censorship and the Twitter censorship. These companies who are private companies, and imagine them if they had no regulation. Imagine if there was nothing in the way of their fully for profit. I mean, it would be bad. So that's what I wanted to get. I just wanted to have his baton down while I did that.
That would be real if there wasn't regulatory capture on every level.
Next. Okay, let's get Thomas in your last word now.
I guess, excuse me. I guess the last word for me would be, please come see all of our shows, because we're going to have a lot of really awesome people coming on, like all throughout the week. We have a lot of amazing guests starting to come up. Also, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that Lawrence Krauss and Travis will be getting together October 13th in Vancouver, if I'm not incorrect about that. Yeah, please check it. All of our upcoming content is going to be amazing, so please check back with us all the time and check to see who we're talking to.
Yeah, Masha, you're up.
I'm going to say, when it comes to these like identitarian, pronouncements and like signaling of group identity, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes, you become like an ever like more distant abstraction of any kind of real self, and you lose touch with any authentic expression of who you are. So don't do that. Also, come at me, bro. Come to my show if you don't like what I'm saying, if you don't like me, if you're triggered, come at me, bro.
And I totally resonate with Masha. You don't like me? Come at me, please. I welcome it. It's one of my favorite things, as Masha liked to point out. Um, but I think at the end of the day, what we really have to remember is that it's not us versus them. It's us versus us. And the only way forward for us to really move is to try to have these dialogues, have these communications, and try to make sure that we don't let specific people or specific groups in our society dictate what we do as a people. Um, yeah, pretty much. I think everyone's already said it great. This is going to be the end of the show, guys. We are moving now to the Discord for the after show. I've put the Discord link a lot. I'll put the banner up again. This is the link. Come join the Discord. Come talk to us. This is how you ask questions. Next show, make sure that you're here so you can call in. We missed our callers. But other than that, as always, I mean, I like to say stay thinking, but as Pangburn would like to say, let art, uh, science, and philosophy inspire. Good night, everyone.
Stay hard.
Night, guys.